Scared you, didn't I? Sorry about that. I use that to wake up the board of directors. I'd like to Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the annual general meeting of the Canadian Kennel Club. A quick count tells me there are 30 members. We have a quorum, which means that your journey here wasn't in vain. I'd like to call the meeting to order, explain the voting procedure. Those of you sitting with the blue name tags are voting members. The red tags are guests. I mostly see blue name tags. I would like to thank the Ontario Veterinary College and the Pet Trust for hosting our meeting here at Guelph University. And a special mention to Kim Robinson, the Pet Trust Managing Director, and Robin Van Alstyne, the Pet Trust Assistant, who were very instrumental in getting us here. I'd also like to thank Patty Milton and Alan Yules for organizing the shuttle bus and some of the signage to make sure that you all found this wonderful building and not got lost. We had a quick tour and we were almost left in the bowels of some building over here, but we did manage to have a very good guide who led us out. And that guide was Dr. Stephanie Nykamp, and I thank you very much for not only the enlightened tour, but also for getting us out. Please appreciate this is my first AGM on this side of the mic, so please bear with me when I stumble. Forgive me when I make mistakes, especially when I make mistakes. As in the past, over the 2014, we lost some CKC members, some very well-known CKC members. I have a list, and I'm sure that it's not all inclusive. I probably have missed somebody. But I'd like to read the names and then have a brief moment of silence in memory of these members. Arnie Berg, Jim Bricknell, David Marcus, Linda Millman, Audrey Peach, Edna Perks, and John Ross, and last but not least, Bob Boxma. And I would like to just give the floor just for a moment to our illustrious legal counsel, Michael Watson, to comment, because I believe you succeeded Mr. Boxman.
Well, I did. Thank you. Thank you very much. For those who don't know me, my name's Michael Watson, legal counsel to the CKC for many years. Bob Boxma was a partner of mine at the Smith Lyons Law Firm in the 1990s. And back at that time, it will amaze you to know that the CKC actually got involved in litigation in the courts. And I'd known Bob for a long time when he joined the firm, and he got me involved in litigation because that's what I do. And I got to know him very well, and got to know the CKC very well. And so when Bob left the practice of law and was appointed to the Ontario Municipal Board, he couldn't practice law anymore. He was CKC's counsel for many years. And for some reason, somebody made the mistake of asking me whether I would take over as general legal counsel for the CKC. And that was a long, long time ago, and the error in judgment continues. So I'm still here, but you know, Bob Boxma was a friend of mine, a great friend of the club, and he is missed by everybody. There are a lot of people here who went up in January to the memorial service for him in Aurelia. Bob Whitney, Mike Shorman, various others. It was an enormous turnout, not surprisingly. So yes, that was Bob Boxma, great friend of and member of the club and legal counsel for many years. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Could we just have a moment's silence in memory of these members who have passed in 2014? Thank you very, very much. I'd like at this time, I'm going to save my remarks for later, and I'd like at this time to introduce the 2015-2017 Board of Directors. We held our first full meeting Thursday and Friday. We came out of it with no wounds, and we're still talking to each other, and we accomplished a fair bit. And I was extremely pleased with the work ethic of the new members of the board. Starting to my right, Lendra Barker, Zone 1, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. H. Brian Reed, New Brunswick, PEI. Linda Saint-Hilaire, Zone 3, Quebec. Richard Paquette, Zone 4, Northern Ontario. Paul Oslich, Zone 6, Ontario West. Peter Laventhal Wolfish, Ontario Central, Zone 7. Larry Karaluk, Manitoba, Zone 8. Dave Gilmore from Saskatchewan, I'm assuming that's Zone 9. Sharon Derrick, our newest board member from Zone 10, Alberta, Northwest Territories. I thought I'd have trouble with none of it. Joan Bennett, Zone 11, BC Southwest. And Sandy Fletcher, Zone 12, BC Interior and the Yukon. They've switched positions. They thought I wouldn't notice. I would like at this time to introduce our executive director. For those of you who don't know, is Lance Novak. And I would ask at this time if he would introduce the staff that are in attendance.
Good morning. I am joined this morning by 3 colleagues. Over in the corner here, in mostly green, is Annette Meggs, the secretary to the board of directors. To Annette's right is Andrew McAllister, our manager of e-business. And over here, you've probably met coming in, is Leela Bahari, our director of registration and membership services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I have a warm welcome for the staff? They're the reason I still haven't forgiven Leela for yesterday, but that's all right. It's she kind of set me up when she sits to, as I'm sitting in the chair, she sits to my left, and she said, "Mr. Chair," and I turned to Mr. Novak and looked, and I heard this voice says, "Bob, that's you." I said, "Oh, right." So I'm still getting used to the title, but I haven't forgiven you yet for setting me up like that. We're even. I'd also like at this time to introduce some of the key players in our committees. The Appeal Committee Chair, Michael Catton. If you would stand up and face, okay? Just for people know what you look like, so when they appear before appeals. Yeah. These aren't the members that you will see. The Audit Committee Chair, Murray Botterill. Discipline Committee Chair, Karsten Kamling. Registration Committee Chair, Eileen Whitney. Our Legal Counsel, Michael Watson. Auditors, Rob Wilkes and Marcus Sconsi. And President of the Canadian Dog Judges Association, Margaret Jones. Thank you all very much for being here. We will make you work later. I'd like at this time also to recognize our annual general meeting sponsors, BDO Canada, represented by Mr. Wilkes and Mr. Sconsi, BMO, BFL, NHL, CFL. Oh, no, wait a minute, that's something else. Sorry. Gowlings, Pets Plus Us, and Rico Canada. At this time, I'd also like to make another announcement. Am I boring you yet? Sorry. Announcement, the 2015 Honorary Chair and Honorary Veterinarian. First off, I'd like to thank Don Wallace from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia for serving as the 2014 honorary chair. Mr. Wallace could not be here in attendance because of health reasons, but we all wish him well and thank him for his year as honorary chair. The honorary chair for 2015, as nominated by this board yesterday, is Ed Gravely. And the honorary veterinarian is Dr. Michel Carrier of the University of Montreal. Our 2013 honorary veterinarian was Dr. Elizabeth Stone, and I would like at this time to invite her to the podium to address this austere group of dog breeders, dog owners, and CKC members.
Well, I'm very pleased that you decided to come to the Ontario Veterinary College for your annual meeting, and I thank Lance for working on this. We've been talking about it for quite some time, and I'm really pleased that we were able to pull it off. I really like dog people, and here's a whole room full of dog people, so I think that that's wonderful, and I think that all of you understand why these creatures are so important to us, and that makes our job easier, and it also gives a lot of camaraderie in an audience because you don't have to explain to somebody why you spend so much time with the dogs because they all understand. The Ontario Veterinary College is more than 150 years old. It's the first school that was in Canada. It's now the oldest in the US and Canada. We used to say that we were the oldest in North America, but now the school in Mexico City is accredited, and so they started a few years before us. And so, but we definitely are the oldest Anglophone school and the oldest in the US and Canada. And it started in Toronto. Some people don't realize that in 1862, and it was because horses were the primary animal of interest. Now, they did take care of dogs and maybe the occasional cat, but horses were so important. And then in the early 1920s, they moved to Guelph to be with the Agricultural College because more and more emphasis was being placed on food safety and public health and the food animal population, and also dogs and cats were becoming more important. And sometimes, I've been the dean now almost 10 years, and sometimes I wonder, well, what would it have been like if we'd stayed in Toronto? Because one of the biggest areas that we emphasize now is pet veterinary medicine. And look at all the pets that live, in this area. Some of you were able to go on a tour this morning, and we certainly welcome any of you to get back in touch with us if you would like a tour in the future. Now, who is the Ontario Veterinary College? Well, it's primarily people. Lots of buildings, but it's the people. We have 460 student veterinarians, and the majority of them by far come from Ontario or have lived in Ontario for at least 1 year. That's the requirement, that they be Ontario residents at some point in their life. But we also have 15 international students per class. Something that you might find interesting is our domestic students pay about $8,000 tuition, and our international students pay $50,000. And the fact that we have 15 students per class, 50 to 60 total, shows how much people know about the Ontario Veterinary College and that people want to come here. And primarily from the United States, but also we've had students from Israel, from some of the Caribbean countries, from Taiwan, a variety of places. And we find this is really good for our own students to see how people have come to Guelph from other places, and also what they value in life, and give our students a bit of a different cultural experience. We also have a very active graduate program in a variety of areas, whether it's in clinical studies or in biomedical sciences or pathology, virology, immunology, those kinds of areas, and also in epidemiology and public health and food safety. So it's quite a busy place, as you might imagine. You can see we have about 110 faculty and 240 staff, and our hospital sees we have about 17,000 patient visits a year. Now, some of them come just once, and hopefully they have, my background is surgery, so hopefully they have the surgery and they go home and they're fine. Or they come, for example, we do radiation therapy, they might come for 10 or 15 times for treatment for cancer, so quite a variation there. So we have about 17,000 patient visits last year, almost 4,000 dogs. Now the discrepancy between the 4,000 and the 17,000 is that many of them come back. And the majority are purebreds, no question about that. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was some of the research that we do at the Ontario Veterinary College and how it may benefit purebred dogs. We have 24 people that are active in doing research to benefit dogs. And all of this research is done with dogs that have naturally occurring diseases, so that they're dogs that live with, what do you call them, pet parents, owners, clients. We always have a hard time figuring out who's the person that's attached to the dog, who's owned by the dog. But we have 24 researchers that are looking at the kinds of diseases that dogs get. 36 research projects were funded this last year, and they're relevant to all breeds, but some of them are more specific than others. So I wanted to give you a few examples. We're doing work in hematology, which is it focuses on blood diseases and also blood clotting. One of them is looking at testing blood clotting ability. Is there a variability from dog to dog or from breed to breed? And if we can find that out, then we know what normal is, because that can vary from breed to breed sometimes. So we have a scientist that's looking at that. And then how to improve the benefits of blood transfusion. That's not an uncommon procedure in our hospital for dogs that have been hit by a car, or if they're having extensive surgery, then they may have a transfusion. And just like in people, they may have a transfusion reaction. So how can we make sure that the blood is going to be as beneficial as it possibly can be? A study that's funded by the CKC, the funding was allocated last year, and the studies began in January, is looking at hemostasis or blood clotting in breeding bitches, because we know that there's the potential for dogs that are in heat that they might be more predisposed to bleeding, and which dogs might have bleeding problems while they are whelping, and how could they be prevented. And so we're really pleased that the CKC is looking at this, and it should help in many different breeds. Another area is in neurology and then also in anesthesia. Intervertebral disc disease, those of you that have dachshunds and some of the other chondrodystrophoid breeds know about the really, really difficult challenge of a ruptured disc in these dogs. And there's a group of our scientists, they're working, these are clinicians who are working with the people that do imaging, doing x-rays and fluoroscopy and those kinds of things, and also the surgeons, that if you have a disc, not you, if a dog has a disc that, you know, for a dog that gets a ruptured disc, the discs are what are in between the different vertebrae in the back. And what happens in the chondrodystrophoid breeds is that a disc is like a jelly donut, where the inside's supposed to be soft and absorb concussion, and then the outside is harder. And in certain breeds, that inside that was the jelly gets really hard. And so there's just the normal trauma or jumping down, those kinds of things, well, then it may push up and push on the spinal cord. Well, what they're looking at is, could you inject something directly into the disc that would decrease the inflammation and decrease the likelihood that it would rupture. And they can do this with fluoroscopy because, as you can imagine, there's a very short distance between injecting it into the disc or the spinal cord, and of course that wouldn't be That wouldn't be the idea. So that's one study and it's being funded by our OVC Pet Trust, which gathers funds for these kinds of studies. Another one is atlantoaxial instability. Those are the first two vertebrae in the neck. And there's some breeds, small and toy breeds, but it usually happens in young animals, where they subluxate. And this can cause neurologic problems. And so our neurologists, again, working with our radiologists and also with engineers, are looking at how would you diagnose this, and are there surgical ways that you could fix this if you see it as a problem before there's actually neurologic problems. And our MRI, which we were talking before, that the difference between getting an MRI for a dog and an MRI for a person is that you probably would get the MRI for a dog within a few days, and well, depending on your province, we'll see how long it might take in the human field. But we're looking at anesthetic techniques. I mean, one difference for many of these kinds of procedures in dogs, of course, is we have to anesthetize them. We have not yet figured out how to get them to lie still and go into the machine. Although some of you may be aware, there was a study that was done by an MD neurologist on his own dog, and he did teach his dog how to lie still, and he did an MRI of his brain and then used different smells and things so that he could look at how the MRI was changing. But most of us would not be that patient to, I know my golden retriever, I don't think would lie there while those things are going on. So we do have to anesthetize them, and we want to find anesthetics that will keep them still, but then we can wake them up really quickly afterwards when we're through with the study. We're very interested in fitness and nutrition in our dogs, just like in people. Last night I was Googling obesity dogs, and there's some really, really bad looking dogs, and there's sort of those ones that appear on all of the the websites of the really, really obese dogs. And we rarely would have that as a problem, but we do know that if people aren't careful, that their dogs, as they get older, will gain weight. And so we have a medical communication specialist, and he's studying what's the difference between what a veterinarian thinks about what should a dog look like and what an owner thinks. It's not as much of a problem in dogs, but certainly cats. People think cats should be pleasantly plump. What used to be what cats look like, nobody thinks that's the case. And so then how do you convince people that, well, your cat could lose a few pounds, or your dog could lose a few pounds? So how do you communicate that without making the owner unhappy or feel guilty? And also, how can you incorporate exercise and other things? It's not any easier in dogs than it is for all the rest of us trying to figure this out. And then we have a nutrition specialist who's looking at thiamine deficiency in critical illnesses. And does that make a difference? If you supplement thiamine, could you have better results? Animal welfare is something that we're really emphasizing, and we have an animal welfare specialist who's looking at animal welfare in veterinary clinics. And what can the veterinarian and the clinic do to reduce the amount of fear that the dog might have when they walk in? What about the smells, separating the dogs and the cats, the type of the floor? How do you acclimate them so that when they do come, they're not afraid? So they're looking at how could you assess this, and how could you help veterinarians say, okay, these are the things that I need to do. And then she's also looking at aggression in dogs, and what are the signs? How are there markers that you could see in a puppy that you would know that the dog is more likely to be aggressive, and how could you train them so that they would be different? Or are there some dogs that are aggressive because of just their general nature, and what would you do about that? One of the things that we've started a few years ago is a cancer tissue bank. Now, this isn't quite like the bank where you have your money stored. What it is that if we're removing a tumor from an animal, well, we take some of the tumor because it has to go off to be looked at under the microscope and diagnosed. But then we take some of the other tumor that would normally be just discarded, and we freeze it. And then we also freeze a blood sample at the same time. And let's say then in the future somebody develops a technique to look at melanoma in dogs, and they can look at the genetic structure. Well, we'll have a bank then of many, many samples of melanomas so that they can look and they can see, are some breeds, does it look like this or some like that? We'll have the histories so that these dogs responded to treatment, these didn't. Was there something in their DNA and in their genes that could help us guide those questions? And so it definitely is a bank. It's an investment for the future. We have right now 301 tumors as of this week that have been collected from 69 breeds. You can see all the breeds there. Doesn't necessarily mean that Labradors have more cancer than one of the other breeds. It's more of a reflection of how many Labradors that we see and how many are in the general population. We know there are some dogs, such as Boxers, which are more likely to have cancer, and unfortunately, the breed that I own, Golden Retriever, is one of the breeds that is more likely to have cancer. But quite a few breeds are represented, and we'll be able to look between breeds and within breeds. One of the ones that we're using the tissue bank for is in lymphoma, and that's the most common malignant tumor in dogs. And there's a way that you can look at the RNA, which is somewhat similar to DNA, and see, are there changes? They've seen this in people, that there's certain changes in the RNA that change with lymphoma, and we may be able to use that to predict what the response is. And many owners, of course, want to know that. They don't want to treat their dogs for a tumor if they know that the treatment's not going to be effective. Right now, it's hard to sort out whether that's the case. We've got broad pictures. I had a dog that had lymphoma, and what we tell people is that almost all the dogs go into remission with the treatment. And they may stay in remission for a period of time, but at 1 year, there's something like 40% that are still in remission, and at 3 years, it's much lower than that. My dog was very fortunate. It did remain in remission for 3 years, and then it came back and just everywhere. And there was nothing more that we could do. So could we tell owners ahead of time? That's what we're trying to get to that point. Then the other big area that we're looking at is how can you use the immune system, the dog's own ability to fight tumors, to fight the tumor. And this could be through vaccinations. Is there a way that you could take the tumor from the dog? For some reason, the body is not recognizing this tumor as foreign. Is there a way that you could help the dog's immune system figure out, well, this is foreign, we need to mount an attack. We can't just let this grow. Or are there other ways that you could stimulate cells so that they will fight the tumors? Osteosarcoma, many of you have known of dogs that have had osteosarcoma, and we're looking at, are there ways to predict what the response to therapy might be, and then also to improve the response to chemotherapy. A few other types of tumors that we have research going on with, melanoma, mast cell tumors, and also the effect of treatment on normal cell populations. Because unfortunately, when we try to kill cells that are rapidly dividing, such as cancer, we may also kill intestinal cells that rapidly divide, or we may kill other types of cells. And so we want to be able to target the cells that are the bad guys and not the others. A lot of these issues are the same things that happen in people, and we are finding that the medical doctors are looking to our results to see what they can find in people. Traditionally, a lot of the work, and it continues to be, a lot of the work in cancer, that is being done to benefit people is being done in rats and mice, where the tumor is induced, or there's a genetic line so that every mouse that's born will have a melanoma, or they'll have another kind of tumor. A tremendous amount of information that's gained from that, because very short lifespan, they can have very large numbers. But are people more like mice or dogs? Well, I guess that's hard to know. But our dogs live in our environment. They eat our food. Maybe they sleep in our bed. They exercise. All those different kinds of things. And so the federal funding agencies, both in the United States and in Canada, are saying, "Wow, that we probably ought to be looking at these dogs that are pets, and what can they tell us about cancer in people?" All of you in your packets will have a book. It's Famous Canadians and the Pets They Love, Live. Or is that true, Robin? No, it's not true. I'm sorry. Only the executive got the book. Is that true, Robin? No. Okay. I don't know what the truth is. That's what both Kim and Robert are saying. So just erase that from the film. Do not, we have this all being videotaped. In any event, there is a book called Live, Love, Famous Canadians and the Pets They Love, which has a whole series of stories. Chris Hadfield is one of the people. Margaret Atwood submitted a poem. And one of the stories is about the 3 Totos, and that's what this picture is. And there's a man that owns all 3 of these dogs, and whenever there is a Wizard of Oz production like there was here in Toronto, then he lives in Toronto, and he has his 3 Totos so that they can appear, because you can't have one dog that does show after show. But there's a number of other story. Brian Williams, not the U.S. Brian Williams, but the good Brian Williams in Canada, that's the sportscaster, and the work that he does, and how much he cares about dogs. It's really quite a good book. And you can get it on Amazon.ca, and also chapters. Yeah, they could be for sale in the lobby, but no. But then you'd have to carry it. So anyway, it's a fun book to read, and it also helps you, again, celebrate these special creatures that we have. So I would welcome any questions. I know you have a very busy program, but if there's anything.
Are there any questions that anybody would have for Dr. Stone?
And if not, you can just email me at estone@uoguelph.ca. But don't ask me how your daughter or granddaughter can get into vet school.
I would like to thank you very much, yes, Dr. Stone. When you came in, you all, I believe, received some material, including the minutes from the 2014 annual general meeting. And if at this time, I'm sure you've all had a chance to study them and make notes. If you could, I'd like a motion to adopt these minutes. Mr. Falgren, a seconder. Mr. Ewells, all in favor? Carried. Mr. Novak, is there any correspondence to come before this meeting?
No, there's not.
What did I miss? I heard him all. Could I at this time call the auditors to come forward to present the 2014 audited financial statements?
Thank you very much. So again, my name is Mark Esconci. I'm a senior manager with BDO, and I'm joined by my colleague Rob Wilkes, who's a partner with BDO, and the 2 of us work very closely on the Canadian Kennel Club audit. So I'm going to walk through the financial statements. So there's basically a couple of things that I'll do. First, I'll walk through our auditor's report, which is page number 2, and I'll sort of give you the highlight of the auditor's report and talk a little bit about what we do as auditors. And then I'll walk through the audited financial statements just at a very high level, and I'll go through some of the significant changes in operations from last year to this year of the Canadian Kennel Club. So first of all, on page 2, our independent auditor's report. So the most important paragraph of this report is the last one, the opinion paragraph, which we are giving a clean audit opinion on the financial statements of the Canadian Kennel Club, which means that we completed our audit as planned, we didn't run into any significant issues or find any significant errors, and therefore we're stating that these statements are a fair presentation of the financial position of the Canadian Kennel Club at December the 31st. Just for a high level, for those who may not be aware what an auditor does, just a reminder, the financial statements are management-prepared financial statements, and BDO, as an auditor, comes in and does an audit on those statements. So what we do as auditors is we look at a sample of the transactions throughout the year. Obviously, it's not cost-effective to look at every single transaction, so we have various techniques that we use to select samples, do analytical procedures. Obviously, we focus on areas that are more likely to have errors or estimation. And through all of those procedures, we've concluded that we're giving a clean audit opinion, i.e. that these statements are a fair presentation. And we use words like fair presentation because obviously we don't audit every single transaction. But overall, we're comfortable with the financial statements. So on to page number 3, the statement of financial position at December 31st, 2014. A couple of big changes from the 2013 numbers that I'll highlight here. First of all, you'll see that the cash is down from $2.3 to $1.77 million. That's a decrease of about $540,000. But if you look at the line right below that, you'll see that the short-term investments are up by about $1 million, from just short of $400,000 to just short of $1.4 million. So basically what's happened here is two things. First of all, the organization has taken some of that surplus cash and invested it in short-term investments to earn a little bit of a return to put that money back into the organization. And secondly, as we'll get to on the next page, we have generated cash by having a surplus of revenue over expenses for the year, and that cash has also been reinvested in some short-term investments. So that explains those two big changes. If you go down into the liabilities and net assets sections, the first line, accounts payable. So there's been a large increase from $265,000 to $411,000, and that's just the result of the timing of a large invoice that had been put into payables for work performed before year end, but had not been paid yet. Again, this is a snapshot right at December 31st, so I'm sure if you fast forwarded a couple weeks, that would have been paid off, and this would have normalized itself. The other big changes are in the net assets section. We're going to get to that. There's a separate statement of net assets in a couple of pages, so I won't go through those now. So if we quickly flip to page 4, the statement of operations. So this page summarizes the revenue and the expenses of the organization throughout the year compared to last year. The first thing you'll notice is the overall revenues are down from 5.5 to 5.35 million. So that is a decrease of about 3%. And if you look through the individual revenue items, you'll notice that that's actually a pretty standard decrease across the board. There's been a decrease in both membership and registrations. And overall, those are also about 3% each as well, as is the shows and trials. So overall, the revenues are down 3%. If you go into the expenditures, there's a couple of large swings that I'll point out reasons for here as well. If you go down to public relations, promotions, and advertising, you'll see there's a large increase from $54,000 to $182,000. That's a result of a marketing initiative that was undertaken during the year towards promoting purebred dogs in Canada, and that item was about $130,000, and that is actually the item that's in payables at year end that I referred to on the previous page. So that is an abnormal item that doesn't happen every year, hence the increase. If you go to the line below it, you'll notice in the programs, projects, and new initiatives line that the expense decreased from $51,000 to an almost non-existent $3,500. The reason for that is that the judges' education program was canceled this year and run in the previous year, so the decrease represents the cost of that program. And then the next thing I wanted to point out is the line below, the board of directors expenses, which you'll see is up $81,000 from $143,000 to $224,000. and that reflects the cost of the election. So the elections are run every 3 years. There was an election in the current year, not in the prior year, so therefore it looks like there's a large swing in that expense, and you'll see that every third year when we have an election. So overall, the expenses went from almost a non-increase from 4.82 to 4.88 million, which represents about a 1% increase. So the bottom line is that the revenue exceeded the expenses by 460,000, which again is another good year. So we've had some back-to-back very positive years, which is allowing us to put more money back into the surpluses to use for future initiatives. The next line below, although minor, is the loss from subsidiary. So just a reminder, that is Apex Publishing. So that is a for-profit entity that is a subsidiary. In other words, it is owned by the Canadian Kennel Club. That is the company that had formerly all of the publishing of the Dogs in Canada Annual, ran through that, and that is no longer occurring. So this company is basically wound up now, and the $2,700 just represents some costs that CKC is absorbing on account of Apex Publishing, and next year that should be zero. So flipping to the next page, page 5 is our statement of changes in net assets. So the net assets is basically the accumulation of the surpluses of the Canadian Kennel Club over the years. And this statement shows how certain portions of that accumulated surplus are set aside for future initiatives. In this case, there's two significant ones I wanted to point out. First, you'll see the third column is an internally restricted election fund. So what we do is we're prudent in setting aside funds. As I said before, there's an election every 3 years. We want to make sure we have appropriate funds set aside to pay those expenses in the third year that occurs. So we had $100,000 set aside at the beginning of the year for that. The election cost us just over $69,000, and therefore there was an excess in the fund of $30,000 that was transferred back to the general fund because it wasn't needed for election costs. And in 2015, you'll see that we'll start to set aside funds again for the next election, which will be run 3 years from now. Then the fourth column, so the column right to the right of that, is our IT and Process Improvement Project Fund. So this was a fund that was set up last year and had $940,000 of surplus allocated to that. So the organization is currently going through a major IT and process improvement project, and the beginning stages of that happened in 2014, and as you see, the $150,673 are costs incurred to date on account of that project, so they have been removed from that fund. As I said, we set aside money in these funds, so then we move the money out in these funds as we spend it for the appropriate purposes. So that's what I'm going to go through on page 5. If you'd flip to page 6, statement of cash flows. This is a summary of the sources and uses of cash of the organization. And there's a couple of important lines that are worth noting. First of all, about halfway down, you'll see the $633,988. That is the cash flow generated from the general operations of CKC during the year. So that's very positive. That's a number you always want to look at and make sure that you're still generating positive cash flows from the day-to-day operations. And then you'll see the line below that shows what I talked about previously, that we've purchased almost $1 million of short-term investments during the year. So that has been the major use in cash. So anytime that your major use in cash is for investing activities, that's always a positive. So despite the fact that you see 3 lines from the bottom that there's been a net decrease in cash of $545,000, that's not actually a negative overall, because the major portion of that was purchasing new short-term investments, which is money we will have for the future operations of CKC. The following pages, pages 7 through 15, are the notes and the accounting policies. So these just provide a little additional context and detail on some of the numbers that I've just walked through. So I'm not going to go through those. What I will say is that there's been no changes to the accounting policies. So if there was a change, we'd obviously go over that here, because that would be something significant. And there has also been no major additions or deletions to the notes that follow the accounting policies, aside from the numbers being updated to reflect the current year numbers. So that is the presentation of the audited financial statements. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions to direct towards our auditor? Could you, when you come to the mic, please identify yourself?
Bob Whitney from Castleton, Ontario. I just had a question on page, you did answer a lot of my questions. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
On page 8, at the very top, regarding accounting policies, it talks about a charity dog show fund. Is that fund in existence still?
The fund is in existence, but there was no operations through the fund in the current year. So there is still surplus sitting there that can be used for future endeavors relating to charity dog shows, but there was nothing in 2014 that happened in respect of that.
Okay, and where is that reflected in
So if you look
the
at
statement?
page number 5, so the statement of changes in net assets, it would be the second column. So I walked you through columns 3 and 4. The second column will show you the $67,546 sitting there as an opening balance, and you'll see the same thing in the comparative 2013 below. So there's actually been no operations for 2 years running in this fund.
Okay.
Just as an
I know there's going to be an addendum here.
May I point out that at the board meeting yesterday, the board passed a motion that these restricted funds would be released through Purina, Nestle Purina, to the National Guide Dog Foundation and Service Dogs Canada. So these funds that have been sitting on our books for 3 years have, with the cooperation of Nestle's Purina, will be presented to these nonprofit organizations, and will not be on this account in 2015.
And I'll just explain quickly one more difference between that fund and the other 2 funds that I talked about, the election and the IT fund. So because this fund involves an external funding source, Purina, and an agreement with Purina restricts what we can and cannot use those funds for, that's why we aren't simply able to just transfer those back into our general surplus. That's the difference if you look at the election fund, for example, where we transferred that $30,000 surplus back into our general funds. We can do that because those are just internal board restrictions that the board can just take that restriction off of and transfer back to the general surplus. We can't do that in this case, so that's why we had to have the blessing of Purina and find an endeavor that suited both parties to disperse those funds to.
Are there any other questions? Could I have somebody move the adoption of the audit statement? Jenny Catton. Seconder, Margaret Jones. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. We come to the portion of the agenda that says Chair's Report, bracket, on my copy, if you so wish. I wish. Since I've only held this position as chair for a little over 2 months, many of you who don't know me would expect my comments to be brief. Those of you who do know me know that probably won't be the case. It's been a busy 2 inaugural months. Westminster occurred. There was a huge amount of chest thumping, pride from north of the border. I couldn't wait to phone my daughter in Minnesota. Canadians and Canadian-bred dogs certainly did us proud. We may not breed in quantity, but my God, we breed quality. In addition to the Best in Show winner, do we have the, no. In addition to the Best in Show winner, Grand Champion Excellent Tashton's Looking for Trouble, or Miss P as she was known to her friends, and her best in show win at the guiding hands of Will Alexander. Miss P was bred and owned by Laurie and Caitlin Crandallmeyer from British Columbia, a Canadian dog, Canadian handler. It's been done only once before in Westminster history with an Old English sheepdog and Malcolm Fellows. Canada was well represented in that best in show ring. The sporting dog was Canadian-bred Portuguese water dog, American Grand Champion Clare Creek Impression de Matisse. Matisse was the #1 dog in the United States in 2014, bred by Donner Gottdenker of Ontario. The non-sporting group winner, Flame, Canadian-American Grand Champion Darwin Hearts on Fire, bred and owned by Linda Campbell, also from Ontario. Also #3 overall in the United States. Other Canadian group winners were American Eskimo Dog. Oh, I wish it hadn't been this. Grand Champion Excellent and American Grand Champion Nutux Atka Inukshuk. I'm a little weak on Inuit. Was awarded a group 4th. This dog has won the breed at Westminster for 6 or 7 consecutive years. It was bred and owned by Sharon Robinson and piloted by Graham Burden. Second in the herding group, we just missed having 4 in best in show rings, was Stone Pillar Steel Blue, co-owned and handled by Elaine Paquette and bred by Bruce Ham of Stone Pillar Kennels in Hastings, Ontario. And I'm going to stretch it here a little bit, although not officially a Canadian win in the true sense. We're going to take credit for Luke Ehrlich's win with the Shih Tzu American Grand Champion Hallmark Jolly Rocket Power. Luke, everything he learned from up here. We are taking credit for that. So I want you to join me in congratulating these dogs and the many, many others with Canadian pedigrees that were awarded Best of Opposite Sex, Select, and Award of Merit at one of the biggest and most popular shows in the United States. And on another note, congratulations also goes out to Olivia Nobes from North Vancouver, representing Canada at the Junior Handling Finals in Crufts, where she finished 2nd, followed by a win last year by a Canadian handler. So as Canadians and as CKC members, I think you all should be very, very, very proud of those beasts that we produce, because they are competitive worldwide. As the new chair of the Canadian Kennel Club, I am excited, I was also surprised, and concerned as we moved forward. Our membership remains stable. We lose 2,000, we gain 2,000. We don't make headway. However, our core revenue streams of registrations and shows and trials continues to drop. This is because of the fact that we are not selling as many purebred dogs. We must find additional sources of revenue. It puts pressure on our organization to discover means of producing additional revenue. More purebred dogs, more registered dogs will equate with more participating in all CKC events. Everyone says they're dropping at shows because of too many shows, because of handlers wins, because of this, because of that. There's a myriad of reasons, and I don't dispute that they all accumulate to create part of the problem. But the fact is that when your registration rate of purebred dogs, which is kind of like the minor leagues for all of these events, drops 50% over the last 10 years, why would it be a surprise that event participation is dropping? Or any other. So I believe that the responsibility is to get registrations up, and the only way to do that is to promote purebred dogs. And the CKC continues to search for innovative means to promote our dogs and our breeders, because the theory being, if there's a market for our purebred dogs, our breeders will breed more. When I'm out talking to my members, I hear all the time, well, I'd breed a litter, but I can't sell them. I still got 2 left over from my last litter. So they don't breed them. They're breeding for themselves, not getting them out. In this vein, the previous board to the board sitting in front of you authorized Quadrant Communications, an organization that specializes in putting together campaigns, to create a campaign based on the word pure and to drive puppy buyers to our revised puppy list on our website. These are an example: pure performance, pure love, pure devotion, pure tradition, the word pure, and at the bottom of each one, CKC.ca. It's just an attempt not to address the membership. You know where to go, the general public. This strategy included various media sponsorships, including CMT Network, Pick a Puppy. As many of you are aware, this created a huge firestorm because one of the online episodes contained a mixed breed. The television episodes that we were offered, I vetted, I looked at them. I consulted with other CKC members because there were some people on there I didn't know. 25% of the segments that we selected were CKC members. The remaining segments were all purebred dogs. I took an active part in that vetting. I will stand here in front of you and take the arrows for that. But as often as the best laid plans of mice and men, something went awry. Somehow a mixed breed got in there, and that created the firestorm. We were targeting the Pick a Puppy audience based on advertising principles of targeting potential consumers for the product we were selling. Henceforth, we didn't go on the Golf Channel. We went on Pick a Puppy. I fully understand that as CKC members, being very active in the dog world, because I watched several episodes and I winced. However, I stood back and said, it's not aimed at me. It's aimed at people who are interested in buying a puppy, and to drive them to our website, ckc.ca, and our puppy list. After that show was aired, we had an increase of 212% on the puppy list. As somebody who worked in the advertising field, that was a success. I know in your minds it wasn't, but as an advertising, if I wasn't involved in dogs, that was a success. It's also only a small part of an initiative of a larger plan to market and to promote our purebred dogs. We have new banners similar to this philosophy coming out in this type of a form that the directors will be taking out to all our shows. Because we realize that if a John Q. public goes to a dog show looking for a purebred dog, they have no idea that that show is being sanctioned by the Canadian Kennel Club. We're remiss in that. We're not selling the Canadian Kennel Club. I speak on behalf of this board when I say that I believe we have an obligation, and we feel that obligation, to promote the purebred dogs and to assist our breeders, our members, in placing their puppies in great homes. The option to not doing pick a puppy in some of these is to do nothing. And I, as a member, would criticize the board even more so if we did nothing. Anything you do is going to have a yin and a yang. We're going to create some issues. There's an old saying, you got to break some of my eggs to make an omelet. And unfortunately, we suffered the backlash, and rightfully so. But I must tell you that the agencies and the networks were well made aware of our sensitivities, but it happened. Other changes on a brighter note that I'd like to mention is that we are working very hard with our IT, and I keep putting in my notes by the end of the year, and it keeps being taken out, edited, not to be so optimistic. We are currently working very hard. We have funds set aside to replace what we call the APPX system, which has been our mainframe for a long time. And it is not serving us well. It is actually preventing us from doing a lot of things like getting entry results from shows and trials done hard. We still take our shows and trials results out of the catalogs. It's so archaic. It's such a waste. So that is being worked on. We're working on making more online registration opportunities. How many of you have tried to register a litter online that's co-owned? That's going to change. That's going to change. We're looking at revising the puppy list and making changes there. So there's a multitude of other member benefits, and we're very, very aware that you, the members, are the backbone of this organization, and you're actually our only salvation. So we are working very hard to add benefits to your membership, to create an environment that you can do more online, be happier with our website, and also to help promote your puppies. Make no mistake, this is going to be a challenging 3 years. I just made it almost sound easy. It's not. We're probably going to have a lot more angst and a lot more social media backlash from here and there, because unless you try something, you're just going to stagnate. And I think that we're willing to take some of that in order to move ahead. And to be honest, I think this is a fight that we can win. And I really hope that we're all on the same side, because we can't do it alone. In fact, we need you more than you can imagine. And I want to thank everybody for showing up, because again, this is the backbone of the Canadian Kennel Club. And thank you very much. Now I got to get back on my list here. Where am I? I have a different one. Excuse me 1 minute. Oh, Rob is going to get up because we just had an election. We need a report of the election of the Board of Directors by the Election Commission. According to the bylaws, the Election Commission shall be a duly appointed auditors. Invite the auditor to present the report of the Election Commission. We don't need a motion to accept this, we just need a presentation. It's basically for your information. Rob?
Thank you very much. My name is Rob Wilkes. I represent BDO Canada LLP. We've been the auditors of CKC for a number of years, and we supervise, oversee from an independent standpoint the election process of the directors. This year the election process changed substantially from prior years in that there was an electronic option for voting. The management and the board determined that it was in the best interest of the organization to move forward with an electronic process, and that was executed. We were involved in that process from the beginning. We oversaw that process to make sure it worked efficiently, effectively, as we see with any election. If you don't make sure you have proper controls and processes in place, that the elections can go awry. That is what we were involved in, making sure that the election was in fact fair. The other thing we do as part of the process is review all nomination papers, ensuring that everyone who puts their name in to run for the board of CKC is in fact eligible to do so, and we ensure and oversee that process as well. One of the things that we did this year, which was a little unusual, is the sense that there was both an option to vote paper and an option to vote electronic. So of course the concern there would be, can someone vote both paper and electronic? The answer is no. So we had to go through a process in ensuring that any paper ballots that were received, that ballot had not also been cast electronically. So we went through that process to ensure none of that had happened. There's actually 14 cases where that happened, which you would expect, by the way. That is not unusual in our experience of running elections. We did investigate those to ensure that there was no trend in that, in the sense that it wasn't it didn't look like that it was an attempt to change results. And there was no indication of that. There was also no, we also took a look at that and saw that to see if those ballots would have had any impact on the election. They would not the paper ballots were removed and the electronic ballots were left in the results, and that is consistent with the process that was put in place by management. So after doing all that, we are pleased to report that we were able to certify the election results on December 4th, and that this board of directors that you see in front of you was duly elected using an appropriate process. And I get to all these wonderful speeches that I've heard so far. I get to make one comment, and I was talking to a number of the directors. There's a lot of work that gets involved from running for election, putting your name forward. As the election commissioner, we are responsible for encouraging people to run, encouraging people to vote. And I'd just like to thank everyone for putting their name up, both those who won and both those who didn't run. It is a lot of work. There is a lot of time and effort involved in being a director of CKC. And I know there are a number of people here who've been directors in the past and the directors in the future. On behalf of the election commissioner, thank you for putting your name up, and thank you for running, and good luck.
Thank you very much, Rob. I was sorry. Are there questions?
Of course.
You may have to come back here, Rob.
Sorry,
And
unless
you
I
are-
nodded Bob
order-
Whitney, Castleton, Ontario. I may have nodded off, getting older, you know. But can you tell us what the proportion of paper ballots versus electronic ballots was?
I do not have those numbers here with respect. We do know those numbers. Management is aware of those numbers. There is a significant number of ballots voted electronically, but that data is not available, but we can certainly get that information to you.
Okay, my next question would be, it's my understanding if you voted electronically this time, you will not receive a paper ballot with the next election. Am I right?
I will pass that question to management.
Thank you.
I am going to stick my neck out, and if you will, I can confirm, but I believe the answer to your first question is roughly 50-50. But more specific to your second question, there is a committee struck that has already commenced work on a post-mortem of the entire election process, and those are the types of things under review, and recommendations are being formulated in that regard that will be brought back and gone through a process like bouncing them off the board for reaction and review.
So you think roughly 50-50, getting back to the first
Yes.
question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Now you may go away. And talk about making an error. I went zipping right by item B on my agenda here that says, invite the Executive Director Lance Novak to speak. I thought I'd shorten the meeting.
Thank you, Bob. Well, if there is any good news. My predecessors have done such a good job that I think I will be able to be brief, because some of their comments may have overlapped with what I wanted to share. And I will. So great. So once again, welcome and thank you for joining us for this important. It is now afternoon, so I'll say good afternoon. I'd like to share a few comments on behalf of both what has gone by. This is an AGM for 2014, and supplement some of the highlights that you've already heard with some illustrations. But we don't get a forum like this together very often, so I think it is a great opportunity to provide some more current information about what's underway for 2015. And I'll start, and I think every opportunity like this is also very important to reiterate things like the strategic direction of the organization. Your board is very new. There's some new players on the board. I personally am also extremely encouraged by the camaraderie, the enthusiasm, the desire to excel and achieve with this new board. This new board has adopted a 3-year strategic plan with 4 key strategic imperatives that are designed to give counsel to every decision and action that we take. So it includes the promotion and pursuit of health and well-being of purebred dogs, the growth of the Canadian dog fancy, advocacy of purebred dogs in the Canadian Kennel Club, and finally internal change and process improvements so we can do our jobs as best as possible. Your board has already commenced discussions about being in the home stretch of this 3-year plan and what it means about reviewing the value of the current plan as it exists, what needs to be tweaked, what needs to be changed, what needs to be thrown out, and they're very eager and ready to do that review. You've heard this already from a few people. We are in a strong financial position as your club. 2014 was positive for us. On the left-hand side, the green bars represent the lines of business in which we pursue revenue. You will see most of them fell short, with a few exceptions of the registration division was a little bit better than budget. And second to last on the right-hand side is product sales, exceeded budget as well, and I think it has for a few years in a row. The reason we track and illustrate these things is for clues, and you'll see investment to try and increase those bars around product sales because it's currently performing well for us. The line graph represents our ability to constantly keep our expenses under control throughout the course of the year against the budget the board gives us. That's the positive news. The next few slides, the volume of our business, core business, is not doing well. Registration did fall short yet again. It was close to what we predicted, but it was still a decrease in registration. Bob mentioned almost 50% over 10 years. I think this represents approximately 25% over 5 years. Membership is stable, but things like this give us clues to our business. The red bar you will see is getting a little bit bigger year over year, while the grand total of membership has remained a little bit constant. The red bar represents a very valuable portion of our membership called life members. But we have to be aware that that red bar is getting bigger because they currently don't contribute financially to the organization with dues. So by no means do we want to alienate or look at this group any other way. It's that blue bar that we need to nurture and trying to expand. And then finally, the event entries. We had a strong year out of the gate in the first 3 quarters, but overall entries continue to decline for the organization. I'm going to step very, very briefly out of the CKC because we are talking about 2014 and just speak very briefly about the CKC Foundation, which is a charity that is partially administered with the support of the CKC. And just say they also had a banner year in 2014. A mandatory review and update of our governance was completed based on some new federal legislation. A new brand identity was developed and launched, as was a new website. You heard Dr. Stone make mention to some funding projects underway with this organization, but that was just some of the fundraising events and tactics that went on throughout the course of the year. And grants. We had grants both awarded and some still live and soliciting submissions. Grants, for those that don't know, the mandate of the foundation allows for the pursuit and the awarding of a grant on 2 tracks. One is specifically for scientific research, and the other one is to promote the human-animal bond. So with your indulgence, I'm going to move a little bit to 2015 and provide a bit of the highlights of what has been proposed and your board has supported through a budget for us to achieve on your behalf in some of the status of some of those activities. Gross overgeneralization, but I've tried here to give you some of the highlights aligned to the different lines of business that we do. So from a registration standpoint, you're going to hear us talk about throughout the year the continuing pursuit of the work plan for the rules of eligibility that received a lot of talk last year and through the referendum process. The good news is there's a formalized committee that's looking at the positive results we got out of the referendum to stabilize this process with procedures and policies and focus on existing, listed, and new breeds. And I think that was the prime reason we wanted to pursue this selfishly, was that those listed breeds and new breeds, because we were being denied the ability to recognize them until we established rules of eligibility. Completion of a DNA registry service that I'll talk a bit more in a second. Events. Events are in a critical situation for us right now, so it may seem very simple, but the area of focus is for staff to support and work and guide and facilitate the committees and the councils, i.e. the subject matter expertise, the source of the future for events, to increase participation through new, existing, and new events. Off the top of my head, I think this week's board meeting, for example, asked the Lure Coursing Council to take the reins of a chaseability program and see what it could bring to the CKC in the market. IT&E business, sorry, I skipped one. Marketing and communications. Continue the market expansion campaign to promote purebred dogs. We've got the funding, we've got the support, we've got some momentum, and we've got a hell of a lot of feedback from you on what to do with it going forward, and we're doing our best to listen to that so that we can use the funds appropriately. IT&E business, also very easy. We're pursuing an all hands on deck to pursue the replacement of that APPX system that's just literally decades old and not doing us great service right now. At the same time, we launched a website last year. We want to shift the focus that we had in the first year of launch to new audiences in the general public to serve you better through self-service options, promoting your clubs better, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then finally, more traditional operations is to pursue responsible decision-making, run your club as effectively and responsibly as possible with what you give us, including our HR policies and resources. We do have a project underway to better utilize that facility we have in Toronto or Etobicoke. And then finally, continue as a regulatory body and the expertise on staff to act in a consultative way with the club and the members on its review and assessment and direction to ensure our compliance. So I'll break down a few of them that haven't been spoken to or spoken about already. For those that may recall last year, there was a threat from Agriculture Canada that the Animal Pedigree Act under which we are governed may be repealed. So far to the point that a national consultation was held, part of which we participated in. As a way of follow-up, we have a live project underway to develop a contingency plan in this event. But we continue to seek communication from Ag Canada, and it is our current belief that this has become, this is starting to die as an issue. The report from the consultation has yet to be published, several months after it was due. This is an election year. We are forming the opinion that the likelihood of this is diminishing, but we will still continue to place work on a contingency plan. Rules of eligibility, now that the 7 breeds were approved in the referendum, they are still pending official and final approval with Agriculture Canada, but the formal committee continues its work to pursue additional breeds and is developing a work plan. The DNA registry is something I've spoken about in previous talks. I think the value proposition and the benefit of a DNA registry is very clear. And for those that may not know, we are pursuing this in partnership or in alliance with the American Kennel Club because they've already had one for many, many years. It will get us out of the gate a lot quicker. And I think one of the most beneficial features of that alliance is that we can pursue mutual recognition of data across the borders. So we stalled a little bit from our end last year because of some distracting priorities like the website. We felt we better get the new website up and running before we launch this product. The AKC has just gone through Westminster. They've also launched a website. So we're in active conversation with them to align our resources to pursue that. Mrs. Bahari is very much a qualified person to assist the CKC in leading that charge. Very quickly, a point that the cropping, docking, and dew claw removal initiative that we spoke about previously is still an active initiative, and we continue to make progress to consult with the national clubs to consider changes in their breed standards to offer options and choice in this regard. I won't spend too much more in this. I don't know if I can get this to work, but the market expansion fund that
brought to you by the Canadian Kennel Club. Discover Kennel, Canada's trusted source for purebred dogs for over 125 years. Find your new best friend at thepupulist.ca.
I'm sorry I didn't warn you. Are you okay? The Market Expansion Fund approved by your board of directors had 3 tracks. Mr. Robotham has spoken significantly about the campaign to promote purebred dogs in the Canadian Kennel Club. Additional tactics include perhaps more palatable tactics. We're looking forward to coordinating some events in the Quebec market and the West Coast that will intimately involve some of the memberships and breeders, live events as well. The other 2 tracks are the sponsorship strategy and the puppy list. This is very much stuff happening behind the scenes right now, but we do have people and resources assigned to the pursuit of a variety of sponsorship candidates right now. An example of alliance is the work that was done to switch our partner for pet insurance to Pets Plus Us. And just a pitch to them is that we feel we've made a very good decision and alliance in that they're far more engaged and sensitive to the needs. They want to work with you on what resonates with you and your customers and your purchasers. So they're looking to speak to you over the next several months. Moving to the puppy list a little bit, that you saw was an area of focus in the recent campaign. There are the numbers that Bob alluded to in a 1-month period and the types of impact these activities and these tactics can have. But I wanted to spend a moment because, again, your board spent a great deal of time this week talking about the current situation, the opportunity, and giving some direction on where to take this. This illustration is an example of a profile of an existing member and their profile on the puppy list. We made a commitment when we launched our website that it would provide more user-driven content, and this is an excellent example. These profiles allow any of you that are breeders, members that are breeders, to create your own descriptions and depict yourself in a way that you would like to do and change that content. You can tell us, regardless of what litters you have registered with us, how many and which breeds you want to be found on through the puppy list. If you're doing a much better job than us on the puppy list, but we're the first point of contact to a potential customer, we'll simply provide the handoff through links to your tactics. Those photos are within your control. Litter details are also within your control. You can turn off some of the litters that you don't want displayed because perhaps they're sold and no longer relevant. There is a lot of talk amongst the board around the policies and procedures on just who can get up on that puppy list and what and how fast we can be when there's criticism or perceived violation. Our best defense in this regard right now is educating the visitors to the puppy list on what their rights are and why the CKC adds value and integrity through the declaration of compliance to the codes of practice and ethics. Of course, we disillusion some people as a regulatory body and how fast it takes to process a complaint, but we're looking to promote what consumers' rights are through the puppy list. Going forward, we're debating the options available to open this up to all the membership and then perhaps have scalable features. We are developing reports to the breeders, the participants in the puppy list, so that they can understand what they're getting out of it, who's visiting, and what kind of hits and reviews visits they're getting. And then finally, we're hearing loud and clear we have to do something about that reference to the phrase premier, because it's creating some misunderstandings in what its original intent was. We've been getting a lot of lumps lately, but I think we've been making some progress as well in increasing the profile of the Canadian Kennel Club over the past few months. We had a windfall, no doubt, from the activity at Westminster and Crufts, but we got profile. We were we leveraged the expertise of people like the board members and had online or national or live coverage and interviews with some of our board members, Global News and the Toronto Star. There was pickup nationally of our press release on the top 10 most popular breeds in Canada that we issued. CBC News picked up some of our reaction, or we were asked for reaction, and they offered our reaction to the animal cruelty challenges at Crufts recently. We're also seeking out more exposure and trying to get out in the field and carefully selecting the biggest bang for our buck in the events that we choose to participate in, like the Canadian Expo, where we're actually working with other organizations to increase the resources and the subject matter expertise at these events. We've invested recently more in our social media. In an individual that started very recently has been getting some favorable response and has generated a 14% jump in the likes in just the first month. That was the prime reason we had, I think it was 40 posts overnight on the Westminster Winds, is because we had that investment in the resources. Shifting gears a little bit to the e-business project in terms of a status update. I mentioned earlier we want to shift the activity from the website from speaking to the general public to helping you and supporting you better. The next module to launch is the calendar of events, and this is a prototype for those that can see it, followed by the online store, and then work on the member portal. Keep in mind, please, that a lot of the restriction in what we can do on the website is because we're still linked to that archaic system behind the scenes. The financial system upgrade that was kind of done behind the scenes is allowing us to analyze our business a bit better. And then finally, the APPX replacement is currently still in the needs analysis of different sorts. In 2015 will be the year that you will see us reaching out to you, looking for candidates on steering committees and focus groups of various profiles so that we can get your input. I think this is my last slide. I just wanted to say, moving forward, we're also investing in making changes to the skill sets in the organization. So for those that don't know, we have a variety of postings out right now. And I guess this is a functional org chart that I can explain if people are interested. But my point here is we're looking to acquire new skills in the organization, specifically in the red areas. leadership in events and shows and trials to push process improvements, change, lead change. We're looking for people in market expansion, which is just a fancy way of saying marketing and communications and business development. We're looking to just expand our resources even more on communications because we can't keep pace with the demand right now and are prey to a lot of criticism in that regard. And maintain our commitments to bilingualism as a national organization. I said a lot very, very quickly. I think you're entertaining questions from the gallery later, so I will leave it at that, and thank you for your attention.
Do you notice that his slideshow worked and mine didn't? I guess I should have done it myself. When you registered, you received the annual committee and council reports. That's that wonderful little blue book in front of you. And at this time, if you've had the opportunity to look at it and the various reports, if you have any questions, I can direct you to the committee, the new committee or council representative that is now heading that particular committee. Are there any questions on the blue report? Are they French? Yes. We are a bilingual organization. Yes, you are. Linda made us do that. No. I have an English one. Well, here, do that. Trade it for a French. I have a French one back to give to Linda. Well, now that you've sped read, now that you've had a quick glance at it, are there any questions that I can direct to any of the new council members? And I really feel unfair doing that because these people were just appointed in January, and these reports are really based on the previous board's chairs and committees. Are there any questions? Take them home and read them. They're great bedtime reading. Is there any unfinished business to come before the board before we get into opening up the floor to the members? This is going just like a board meeting. Oh, sorry, could you come down to the...
My name is Ted Falgren. I'm from London, Ontario. My observation is on the minutes from the last meeting. When you go to the new business, there are questions put by the members to the board. Nowhere in there is there any indication of any action or any consideration given to the questions. My suggestion for the future is that there be a comment put in as to what is happening with all of those questions without having to direct the members to go into excessive review of minutes or of committee reports. Purely an observation.
These are official minutes, and I don't think that that would be the correct place to put them. Each of these actions have been followed up with the people who stood before the microphone and ask the questions.
But a lot of us would like to know what the results were, maybe an attachment
Valid.
or a separate document which indicates what has been done on them could be put together.
We will make note of that, and next year when you arrive at the AGM, I hope that there's an addendum that you can have.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Board members, you got off lightly. New business. I'm going to open the floor to the members in attendance to discuss any topic you so desire. I don't even have to look up. I know Mr. Whitney's at a microphone already. I would like you to deal with one topic at a time so that we're not repeating the topics all the time. So please identify yourself and your spelling of your name. Just for
My name is Allison Foley. I was going to get her to send me a list after last year's AGM, but anyhow. My name is Bob Whitney, W-H-I-T-N-E-Y, from Castleton, Ontario, C-A-S-T-L-E-T-O-N. And my question regards microchips. In another era, when we brought microchips in, if I'm not mistaken, and this is what I want to, if anyone knows at the table, there was a percentage stated that if it got to a point where microchips were X% of the total means of ID, that we would go totally to microchips. And in this nice graph here, I'm seeing that we're now at over 70% usage of microchips. And I wondered where that's at. Has that changed, or?
We surpassed that magic number that we were supposed to go strictly to microchips and do away with tattoo, but in discussions and reactions from various members, the previous board also passed a motion saying that we would continue with both, because there are several members of the Canadian Kennel Club that are not comfortable with microchips and will not use microchips and want to continue with the tattoo and identification process. So a motion was passed basically rescinding the motion that set the limit as to when there would be no longer tattoo registrations.
Then I would request that this board revisit this item and look at the possibility of strictly using microchips. It's
So
time to get into the era we're in
So
now.
noted.
Thank you.
You might as well stay there.
I'm done.
Mary Jane Weir, Mulmer, Ontario, WEIR. The past board had 2 presentations by Dr. Brenda Bonnet about the there was an invitation to participate in the International Partnership for Dogs, sharing of best practices, and the Dog WellNet, which has just been online. Considering that Dr. Bonnet is Canadian and that best practices in some countries have coincided with increases in participation in purebred dogs, what response have the members of this current board made to the opportunity extended to the previous board?
I'll let the executive director.
Thank you. The current board has adopted a request from the previous board to do a semi-annual review of the initiative. That occurred just this past week at the board meeting, where I provided very similar information to what you have, and received an update directly from Dr. Bonnet. including the current pricing for participation, the fact that access to the resources still remains fairly open without fiscal participation, and the board, the feedback from the board was to continue on the same course. They did not vote to participate financially and to continue for the semi-annual reviews and monitoring.
Any other questions?
I do have.
Please, save you running up and down those stairs.
Yeah, especially, okay. Several board elections ago, the advanced registry plan was presented to the CKC board and approved. Implementation was delayed, as far as I can recall, because of financial issues and computer software incapacity. Can the current board give me a set of conditions, financial and software, at which point this registry will actually be implemented? And is the registry part of the future computer capacity?
Lila, would you
several.
Lila, would you have the answer to that question?
I don't. Is that medical and genetic committee?
It was under Dr. Boyd.
I will direct, Lila, let me direct this to Mr. Paquette. He indicates he can shed some light on it.
Absolutely.
It was a very worthwhile project that a member in my zone, Dr. Debbie Boyd, had proposed to the board and worked hard and passionate for. At the time, that was almost 6 or 7 years ago, the capacity for our computer system to add things, and what an advanced registry would have is actually on your certificates. It would say some of your certifications for, you know, OFA and various eye tests and that. And we didn't have the computer capability. So when Mr. Novak mentioned we have a steering committee and we're going to be asking input from members across the country for input into what members want our new computer system to do, this is a classic example of something that we want it to do. And as a board member, I'm going to be promoting the advanced registry and asking that when we implement our new computer system, it does indeed have the capability to take care of this task.
Thank you very much. You have a...
One last. This is a matter of information. I have been something of a broken record for the past 3 boards on the subject of standard poodle, lack of diversity, and health problems, etc., facing purebred dogs. I am very happy to say that UC Davis has now a commercial genetic profile and for standard poodles, which translates our analysis of inbreeding from the litter to the individual puppy. And it basically gives breeders a tremendous tool. This test, this profile, is available to other breeds in trouble if they will go to the work of establishing what the range is, and it took us 10 years to do that. But this test is available. It is a tremendous tool, and I would like to ask that the Genetics and Medical Committee take a look at this particular test as a tool for other breeds in trouble.
Thank you very much. We'll refer that to the Medical Committee.
My name is Joey Nattrass, N-A-T-T-R-A-S-S. I'm from Richmond Hill, Ontario. I wonder if you have any idea of when show secretaries can send in show results electronically instead of hard copy.
And no, please, board members, I did not put her up to that. I have been harping on this for many. I keep giving the date by the end of this year, and I keep being told, no, it's not. It is in the works. It is going to happen. The speed, again, APPX won't allow us to do it, so we've got to get the new computer system up and running to be able to accommodate that. And I think ideally, and I can't really promise that that's going to be the end result, but I am very encouraged that we will be creating a program that we'll be able to give to you, or it'll be able to mesh, and we will be able to do that. I can't give you a time frame, but it is a priority item. And they won't get lost in the mail by Pure later. Are there any other questions?
Teresa Connors-Chan, Newtonville, Ontario, last name Connors-Chan. I have a statement to read on behalf of the Doberman-Pinscher Club of Canada, with respect to our standards. Sorry? You can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. I can hear you now.
Teresa Connors-Chan from Newtonville, Ontario. I have a statement to read on behalf of the Doberman-Pinscher Club of Canada with respect to our long-standing dispute with changes to our standard. This goes back as far as 1979. Our old documents and experience show that when alerted of these instances, the CKC has not addressed and in fact has often not replied to our concerns. The DPC would like to inform the new members of the CKC executive and update the remaining members of the executive board on our recent concerns regarding our standard. In 2013, the DPCC was asked to change our standard and by adding a further description of the Doberman tail, which means a long tail. In accordance with our CKC approved bylaws, our membership was surveyed about changing this tail description to our standard, and our membership voted overwhelmingly no. The DPCC informed the CKC of our members' vote on June 25th, 2013. On August 15, 2013 and October 18th, we received requests again asking for our assistance in changing our standard. There was no acknowledgement of our letter dated on June 25th, which clearly stated our membership voted that we did not want to add a further description of a tail to our standard. On November 28th, and again on December 12th, the DPCC sent letters reinstating the wishes of our membership not to alter our current description of the tail. There was no response from the CKC to these letters. On July 9th, 2014, 6 months since the previous letters, we sent a letter to the CKC requesting a response to our letters of November 28th and December 12th. By the way, I have a handout. You don't need to write down the dates, sir. On July 21st, we received an email from Mr. Novak stating that our letters had been received and were under consideration. To date, we have not received a response and would appreciate putting this issue to rest. Based on public statements issued by the CKC on October 22nd, 2014, I quote 2 lines of particular interest to the DPCC that a change to any breed standard must be submitted to the CKC by the National Breed Club, and later in the same statement, revisions made to any of the standards involved were done so with the cooperation, discretion, and control of the National Breed Clubs. We are under the impression that this is that as our membership voted overwhelmingly against adding a tail to our standard, that this issue is closed. We would greatly appreciate a letter stating that our standard will not be changed against our members' wishes and against our bylaws that outline how our standard is changed. I have copies of the aforementioned correspondence for the new members of the CKC board, executive. Our second concern is that on October 23rd, we received a letter from Mr. Furlan with a listing of changes made to the Doberman-Pinscher standard since 1962. We have gone through our records and can only find 2 instances where these issues were approved by the members of the DPCC. We also have identified changes requested by the DPCC in 2005 that have not been incorporated into the standard. We are compiling our list of discrepancies as requested by Mr. Furlan. We expect to have this project completed by mid-April and would appreciate knowing who we can send this documentation to now that Mr. Furlan is no longer with the CKC. We're looking forward to bringing the issue of our standard to a close, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Anything?
The first part of your concerns,
yes,
I will allow the new chair of the Docking, Cropping, Duclaws Committee, Mr. Paquette, to comment.
Thank you.
Teresa, thank you for coming forward and speaking passionately about your breed. As the chairman of the Tail Docking and Cropping Committee, I'm here to allay your fears that the CKC is likely to arbitrarily change your standard. Okay. The new committee has met. Okay. We've reviewed the hard work of the previous committee. I apologize for some of the tardiness in getting back to you, but this was an awesome task for dealing with probably 110 different breeds. And the committee has worked extremely hard. And the new committee's feeling is to respect the wishes of national breed clubs to not make standard changes. We're not going to have any sanctions against them. We're not going to persecute you. From as far as the committee is concerned, your file is closed for the Doberman Pinscher Club.
Thank you.
We will be helping and trying to educate clubs like yourself as to the pros and cons of not for allowing choice in your standards, that you will have that come to you, yes. But it will be in the same fashion, definitely in a collaborative and with respect, because we do respect the national breed clubs. So I'm speaking for the committee. When I move forward to the actual board of directors, there's several members of the board of directors that are presidents of all of breed clubs. Mr. Gilmore is president of the Boxer Club. I'm president of the Canadian Shih Tzu Club. We as board members respect the fact that breed clubs are important entities to our club. And it's not likely that you know, there's going to be a feeling among board members to not respect that. So, having said that, I think you can pass on to your club that everything is good.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
And the second item you brought up will be referred to the Breed Standards Committee, the second portion of your concerns.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ted Falgren, F-A-H-L-G-R-E-N, London, Ontario. Recently, all judges received a notice that the Beaucheron and the Rat Terrier are added to the list of dogs to be judged, and there would be examinations developed and the exams would come out. I am speaking on behalf of an all-breed judge who has asked the question, will all-breed judges that already hold the qualification by judging in the States and having written the exam in the States be required to write the Canadian exam?
Yes. Sorry?
Will there be a fee to write the
There will be no fee, and yes, they will be asked to write the exam. It has been referred to the EOC for discussion. But there will be no fee. That is the board did touch base on that. Please.
I'm Trish Cooper from Millbrook, Ontario, home of Will Alexander. I'm here on behalf of the Italian Greyhound Club of Canada. And as we have all seen in the annual report you have in front of you, there were 42 litters of Italian Greyhounds that were canceled and the resulting progeny. They were canceled, and after several emails, letters, phone calls, etc., we are still very concerned that the CKC has not informed other clubs such as FCI, AKC, etc. And as a result, Mr. Voyager has continued to use those dogs who have had their registration numbers taken away. He's used those papers to get registration numbers in Europe, specifically Bulgaria now, because they didn't know who he was. And unfortunately, he is breeding those dogs that lost their numbers because, as some of you know, DNA proved they were false litters. We're very concerned with our lineage because at this point he's actually selling some of those dogs back to Canada. And eventually those FCI papers that he's getting in Bulgaria on those puppies will be brought to CKC to get a CKC number from the people who are buying them in Canada. As the secretary of CKC, I've had numerous phone calls from people saying that they bought a dog from him and he has promised papers, but of course they will take forever because the CKC is a joke and very slow. So that's what he writes in his emails to people. And unfortunately, the lineage is now coming back into Canada, and it's very concerning to our club. And we would like to know why, we've asked this question many times, why the clubs in Europe, where he is, have not been informed, nor has the AKC, of all of the numbers that have been revoked.
Would you like to respond? Because I don't know the answer. Leila, please.
As a staff liaison for the registration committee, we have informed the clubs where dogs has been shipped to and registered in foreign registry. We've also had requests to send this information more than once, which we have complied with. So as far as the staff are concerned and the division, this information has been sent to the European Kennel Club, AKC, Greece Kennel Club, and other kennel clubs in Europe.
May I just respond to that? I understand what you're saying, Leila, and we've gone through this several times. The problem is that when Mr. Voyager's dogs were in the Hamilton-Burlington SPCA after a raid of 149 Italian Greyhounds, 2 weeks after they went into SPCA, of which the CKC was aware, Mr. Voyager went to the CKC office on October 30th, 2012, that was 2 weeks after, because he had a hearing. While he was there, he transferred papers that were in his name to other people. Some of them were fake names, some of them were friends, and whatever. And he transferred those dogs into those names so that he could get them out of the SPCA, which is exactly what he did. He went and said, these dogs don't belong to me, they were boarded, I need them back. He then loaded them on a plane and took them to Greece. It took him 7 trips to get 35 dogs there. Now, I realize that you informed them of dogs that he owned. Well, he owned hardly anything because he transferred them all to get them back. So my point is, and our club's point is, that the European kennel clubs need to know who these dogs are. He is laughing at us. He is ruining the lines of our breed. And it's very, just think if it was your breed. It's very hurtful.
All I can promise is that we will look into it, and
there are 119 dogs. All I have to do is send the list, and that's it. Or publish it, and I'll send the list.
thank you. Are there any other questions from the floor? Allison Foley, F-O-L-E-Y.
Bob Whitney, W-H-I-T-N-E-Y, Castleton, Ontario. God, there's been short people up here. This is regards to the Asia-Pacific group of FCI countries and judges. I just wonder what stand the Canadian Kennel Club has taken with regards to this. The American Club has taken a very strong stand in that no member, no judge that is from a country that's involved with the Asia-Pacific Kennel Club may judge in the United States. They have canceled judging assignments. And we are under the same rules, supposedly. So we don't know, can we judge in China or can't we judge in China?
Which club do you want to judge for?
I want to judge for both of them.
The answer to that is We had a discussion. We are in communication with the FCI, with Mr. Yves de Klerk. We haven't received correspondence back from him. Maybe Lance could, because he's been dealing with it, to try and get clarification regarding this issue.
I think basically we do not have enough information at this point to develop a stance. It is the best I can say. And we're pursuing that.
What information do you need? They disallow us to judge.
Well, you used the word presumably in part of your explanation. We're also trying to clarify what's presumed.
Well, we have copies of the letters from the Asia Pacific. I mean, I'm not going to get it. I just feel that the Canadian Kennel Club should support the American Kennel Club and pass the same.
The issue, though, with that particular one, Mr. Whitney, and I'm not trying to defend anybody, but the Canadian Kennel Club recognizes the China Kennel Union, which is an FCI. We have no recognition of the American-based Kennel Club in China. And that's the issue that the Americans have. And
I understand all of that. I mean, we've talked about this till cows come home, but I just think it's time for Canada to stand up for its judges. I really do. And I think, you know, they should investigate it further. I hope that's going to happen, to the point of having a meeting with the head of FCI, and I don't mean the secretary. I've seen the letters that have gone between CKC and really the letter they sent us back was very weak. I mean, it tells us nothing. They're saying their executive, FCI's executive, knew nothing about these letters coming out by the Asia Pacific, and they're supposedly looking into it. But I really do think the Canadian Kennel Club has to stand up for their Canadian judges, and they just put a gun to our head, really, that we can't go and judge at one of these clubs. And in fact, most people, if you get a request, we're trying to find out which group they're with because we don't know, you know. Anyhow, thanks.
we will try and arrange a meeting with Rafael Santiago. Are there any other questions?
Ontario, CONNORS-CHAN. Say that 10 times. Just have a question about the puppy list. Do you all have any idea, like, what sort of criteria you're going to use for the people that are going to be listed there? I'll tell you my experience. I was on hold at the CKC, and I just thought, oh, I was looking at the new website and looking around, and for my breed, which is Dobermans, I think there were 4 breeders listed who I had not heard of any of those breeders, and certainly are not partaking in showing. I don't know if there might be a way of maybe incorporating the ethics of, say, the National Breed Club, which requires their members to adhere to be breeders. Maybe that might be something to consider. That was just a major concern for me.
Thank you. All I can tell you is that the puppy list and its criteria is under review. You don't want to hear my Martin Luther King speech, I have a dream. Trust me. But okay. We are aware of,
yes.
Would it be safe to say there are issues with that we want to clarify and to clear up, but that's a work in progress.
Okay, thank you.
Linda Torrance from Caring Place, Ontario. I would like to talk about the pick a puppy thing too. Oh, Torrance, Torrance, Caring Place down the road from Castleton. A couple weeks ago, Kim Groves, many of you know, Bernie's Mountain Dog, top dog all breeds in Canada. She phoned me, needed a blow dryer. I went to her store and she had this thing on the table. And I said, what's that? And she said, it's a Shih Tzu. And I went, oh, okay. It had legs like a whippet, shape of a whippet, a face Benji wouldn't even love, right? And I said, well, where's it from? And she said, it's from Celine Shih Tzus in Oshawa. And so I went home, got on my CKC thing. It appears before Richard Paquette's name. We've never heard of these. Like, we have to come up with something. There's so much talent in this room. There's so much talent on the board. We have to have breeders' input and find a way to use our breeders. I know that if I went to a dog show, I'm going to use Larry as an example, if I went to a dog show in Winnipeg and I walked up to him and said, Mr. Karaluk, you're with the CKC, I'd love to get a Pekingese, he'd probably look at me and say, I'm sorry, there aren't any breeders in Manitoba, but I judge dog shows, go here, here, and here. There's so much knowledge in this room. Use it.
Michael Hill will sell you a Pekingese.
No, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, I walk around with the same picture of a Shih Tzu as Richard Paquette, and we have all these people on this pick a puppy list that they don't have the picture that Richard and I have. They don't have the picture that we have of a Pekingese.
The only comment I could make on that, Linda, is that we are aware, and this is what I say, there are issues with that.
There's so much
we're
talent
trying to,
here.
And it drills right down to the word premier membership, because I don't think $50 makes you a premier member.
No, but we have so many good breeders. And one other point you missed in your beginning, the #1 toy in the United States is from Calgary, Alberta. The Pomeranian, second in the group at Westminster, bred in Calgary, raised in Windsor, Ontario.
Damn, I knew I'd miss one. Thank you very much. I'll have to add that. Are there any other questions? I thank you very much for your were you napping?
Laura Lee Camilleri, Rockton, Ontario. Which one? Camilleri from Rockton, ROCKTON. I know that the CKC is aware of the For the Love of the Purebred dogs, and I'm wondering if there's a way that the two groups can participate. There seems to be an awful lot of interest in Kijiji, and I'm not sure if this has been brought up, but is it possible, because that seems to be an avenue for people to research dogs, unfortunately, and to source dogs from. So perhaps, I know that we're both in the same boat. We both want to grow our purebred registry and our membership. Is there something that the CKC will commit to in participating with the For Love of Purebred Dogs? Because we're a very passionate group.
That will be, all I can say is that on Wednesday, right after meeting with you, we met with For the Love of Purebred Dogs at the CKC office, and we had a very frank discussion, and we do recognize that our goals are identical, and that we would work with them as far as funding that particular group. I don't think that's the CKC's prerogative, because there are many other groups out there, Friends of Purebred Dogs, that we would also be in the, set the precedents to fund. However, one of the very quick things that came out of the meeting and the understanding, and I believe it's been done already, is that there is a link on the CKC site to their website. It's a simple thing. It's a cooperative thing. We understand, and I'm hoping that the people who came from that organization left with the same feeling that we had, that this is a work in progress, and we're willing to work and to go ahead. And we haven't had anything formal from them to request participation or funding, but we are open to whatever they have. And it would go to the board, and the decision would be made at the board level.
I think the objective is we just want to get it on the record.
We're talking.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? All of these items that were raised by yourselves have been recorded. They will be directed to the various committees, councils, and addressed by the board. That is the normal procedure. We have one more item on the agenda, unless I'm missing something. He might be outside. I saw a shadow. Oh, there he is. He's hiding back here. Well, come on down here. Quit hiding. To the members, this is Dr. Brian Wilcock. Some of you may know him. Brian has owned and worked with purebred dogs his entire life. His very first job at the age of 16, says tender age, was a dog groomer and kennel help for well-known breeder and later Judge Bill Taylor and Nigel Aubrey Jones. He and his wife Anne, along with their Belgian sheepdogs, were for many years regular participants in conformation and obedience shows throughout Ontario and Quebec. Brian's love of dogs transformed smoothly into a long career as a veterinarian and pathologist, teaching veterinary pathology at OVC for 27 years. He's an award-winning teacher and researcher with innumerable publications and book chapters relating to ocular, skin, and gastrointestinal diseases. For the past 35 years, in addition to his university work, he has operated a private diagnostic laboratory and has looked at approximately 20,000 surgical biopsies from dogs, cats, and other pets every year. His particular interest in canine genetic diseases, however, is not a traditional one. As an insider, he is particularly interested in the impact of breed standards, dog shows, and breeding practices in general on the genetic health of the entire dog population, including the vast majority intended to be family pets. I turn the floor over to Dr. Wilcock.
Would it be appropriate to take a little short break, do you think?
They may not come back. Don't let the captive audience out.
Okay. I usually take a little break to get my thoughts together before giving a talk. I wasn't expecting to do it quite so quickly, but I caught just the tail end of some of the discussion about breed standards and so on, and I need to allay your fears, mostly allay the fears of the board, I think, that I'm going to say things that will cause you to pick up rifles and try to shoot me, and that would be unfortunate, of course, because then I'd be dead and you'd be in jail, and that wouldn't work very well. The topic of genetic disease is always, I think, quite emotional, and I've walked in your shoes. You know, for years I watched, Charlie McInnes try to convince judges that not all corgis had short tails. I remember working with Martha Thorne, who gave an impromptu handling lesson to my wife when we were at a dog show, and I'll never forget that. Many of you might remember her. My best friend in the world was Skip Stanbridge, who died just recently, and so I go back a long way with purebred dogs. And I don't want you to think I'm therefore going to stand outside making these judgments of, my God, you guys are just all screwed up, that purebred dogs are awful, we shouldn't have them, blah, blah, blah. I own Belgian Tervuurens, I will always have Belgian Tervuurens. So I want you to just accept that I'm going to say some things today. When I listen to people talking about tail docking and ear cropping, to me that's truly small potatoes. It gets very emotional within the breed club. But from my perspective as a veterinarian, as a diagnostician, every day I deal with diseases that should not be there. I deal with things in, bulldogs, Shar-Peis, many other breeds that are as predictable can be, because that's how we make them. And we have a responsibility, I believe, a deep moral responsibility to do something about that. So I'm going to talk to you today with a passion that comes from a long career, and I sit on both sides of the fence. My whole life is I don't treat anything. I diagnose, that's all I do. And I'm tired of getting phone calls from owners with a dog that from the day it was born was doomed to a lifetime of disease because we as breeders didn't take our job seriously. We are well-intentioned, okay, and it's hard to step back from our daily quest, you know, for the ribbon at the dog show. I was at shows every weekend. I'd go to dog show. I've frozen in Temiskaming and baked in Barrie, swam to get to the show ring in Wooler. I've been there just like you have. You know, some of you I recognize. We're all a little bit older than we used to be. So I'm sympathetic to that. But you know, we need to step back a little bit and realize that most of our dogs go to pet homes. And their fate is to be the friends of the children and the adults in that family. And it rips my heart out to see the expense and the emotional trauma of having a dog that really never had a chance. You know? So anyway, I need to find out how to work this projector. Where's the forward? All I need is forward, hopefully, just those. That's excellent. Thank you. All right, let's just start into this, and I don't want you to be bored by this. If you have questions and objections, please yell them out. I'm an easygoing guy. I'm not easily offended, so don't worry about that. As we talk about dog shows, you know, I was thinking about this talk. You ever pondered how strange dog shows are? You know, I'm sure you have, right? Yeah. Take a non-doggy friend to a dog show. They'll tell you how strange dog shows are. But, you know, think about, you know, you've just traveled for 8 hours with your van, a bunch of barking dogs in the back. You go to a dog show. You're all nervous. Your life begins and ends by seeking the opinion of someone who on a normal day you wouldn't give a rat's ass what they thought about anything. You know? Doesn't it strike you as a bit odd? You know? I mean, I can remember that. You know, I'd say, why? I'd wake up on Monday morning and say, you know, we won, we lost. Say, why would I possibly care what that person thought about my dog? Yeah, it's strange. Anyway, all right. So, purebred dogs, we know this, right? I'm just going to go through a few sort of preliminary things, not necessary for this group, but when you think about it, purebred dogs exist only for one reason, and that is the predictability. This is the thin razor on which we walk. We want our dogs to be predictable in terms of what they look like and who they are, how they behave. People who buy them want the same thing. You know, you go shopping for a car, you know, you have your list of requirements. You don't want to end up with an Austin Mini when you need a Grand Caravan. You know, and the same thing in dogs. I get lots of people, as you do, asking what kind of dog should I get. I have no vested interest. I've only bred a few litters in my career. I slipped them through Skip Stanbridge's kennel because the last thing any veterinarian wants is to sell puppies. For the rest of the puppy's life, I'm free advice calls every Friday night. Don't need that, you know. So, but, you know, so what owners want is they want that predictability. In turn, we'll get to that in a second, but there's a cost for that predictability. We'd like it to be absolute. Right? The owner, the prospective puppy buyer walks in, they see mom and pop Doberman and say, I'd like the puppy to look and act just like that. Of course they'll be obedient from the day they're born. You know, of course they'll do all those things that I've trained this dog for 10 years to do. But nonetheless, that's what they want. And the closer you come to that, the more popular you will be and the more successful as a breeder, because your dogs will be like peas on a pod. Dobermans, I know there's several Doberman people here, have done a really remarkable job in kind of stabilizing that breed to a very predictable product. I've watched them shift in temperament over the years from one to the other. You know, Dobermans I meet now, and I have 2 Dobes live on my street. My Belgians play with them all the time. You know, pussycats compared to what they used to be. Of course, if you want a guard dog Doberman, I'm not sure where you go to get one. Anyway, okay. Why not purebred? What's the argument against them? Well, let me tell you absolutely, and people deny this. They're wrong. Purebreds are not as healthy. They are not as healthy. Ask any farmer. Anyone that breeds cattle, chickens, pigs, it doesn't matter. The reason to have purebreds is only to produce the first generation crossbreds, because the crossbreds grow faster, do better, and have fewer diseases. Purebred dogs, on the average, live a shorter life, have more diseases, and cost more, not only in initial cost, but in veterinary bills. Ask the insurance companies, they will tell you that. Consumers aren't stupid. They will look at veterinary bills. Go to Mississauga Oakville Referral Clinic with a dog with vomiting. You'll come out with a $3,000 bill. I kid you not, okay? So it's a very expensive operation. So purebred, not purebred, I want predictability, but I'm afraid of the reputation for disease, the cost of the puppy, but also the lifetime veterinary costs. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and maybe we need the lights down a little bit. Do you think that would be, can you see the screen all right? It's okay? And again, don't get mad at me for this, but this is just the truth. We need to recognize this. We will continue to produce purebred dogs, but we cannot do it blindly and in ignorance about what we're really doing. If you are a geneticist, the first thing I would, if I were a geneticist, which I am not, I would tell you purebred dogs are a bad idea, period. They break all the rules of genetics. It's the only species in which we humans do this kind of manipulation. You don't do it in cattle or pigs. One pig looks pretty much like another. They change their color, but they don't go from Chihuahua to Great Dane. They don't do it even in cats, right? All of the people breeding sphinxes would like to do that. We need to do something about that. Line breeding, so from a fundamental perspective, purebred is a bad idea genetically. We don't allow it in people. We call that incest. We call it inbreeding. Look at royal families that got into trouble with all kinds of mental and physical problems because of that. It's the truth. Pitcairn Island, the human experiment. You know, bad idea. Inbreeding's a bad idea. Line breeding, we want to sell a uniform product. Line breeding is how we do it. It makes it even worse because it reduces the amount of variability. But even worse is line breeding based on success in the show ring. We know this is true. We all know this, that why dogs win and lose in the show ring has relatively little to do with any utility they might have as a working dog or even livability as a pet. It's a beauty contest. Yes, there are cattle shows, there are horse shows, there are pig shows. If you're going to choose the winning cow, it's all about physical attributes that make her good for milking. It's all about the udder, the legs that carry the udder, the eyes that direct the udder, the reproductive tract that activates the udder, but it's all about milk production. In horses, it's all about jumping or running. In dogs, what's it about? You know, my first job with Bill Taylor, I looked after a kennel of 45 Pekingese. You know, that was an experience, okay? You know, getting to know Bill Taylor was also a great pleasure. But, you know, I mean, they would choose their dogs, as we all do, based on who won, under what judge, you know, and with nothing to do with anything practical. We like to think we're choosing them for some utilitarian purpose, but we're not. We're choosing them because they look nice. Not a good idea, okay? We know that. I'm not going to stop you from doing it. We'll all continue to do it, okay? I brought one of my Belgians over from Europe a number of years ago. He was a fabulous dog. First of a whole new kind of Belgian, bred in Belgium from their best kennel. Came to North America, won every show he entered. You know, best of opposite in his very first specialty at the age of 9 months. That was about 2 weeks before his first seizure. You know, seizures are a problem in Belgians. And people were saying, oh, look, they all seizure, don't worry about it, breed them anyway. I could not, you know, couldn't do that. Anyway. Line breeding based on success in the show ring, bad idea. Let's remind ourselves what dogs are supposed to look like. If you take any population of wild dogs or canids, wolves, foxes, Cape wild dogs, or the closest counterpart in our world would be the Alaskan Husky, the sort of breed that has emerged in the Iditarod sled dog world. For those dogs who are bred generation after generation for one utilitarian purpose, to run like the wind and to do it all day and all night. When you end up letting Mother Nature choose, it ends up with a dog that is square, 40 pounds, upright tail, upright ears, medium this, medium that, medium everything. We don't end up with bulldogs, Irish wolfhounds, Chihuahuas. We end up with Mother Nature's view. Every time we alter that, we need to realize what we're doing is we're being unnatural. Okay? Of course we do it. If I were a breed of Chihuahuas, I'd probably still do it. But I want you to realize what we're doing. You know, that we are walking this very thin edge, and it's kind of unnatural. And that's the risk we run. And I've already mentioned this, but it is true. In no other species have we intervened this way to play God so quickly over just a couple of 100 years, really, compared to the whole evolutionary thing. The first dog show in the world, I believe, was held the same year that Charles Darwin published his evolutionary theories. And so dog shows are sort of the denial of Darwinian evolution, in which utilitarian goals dictate how a species evolves. And we've interfered in that. We like to think, you know, just on that last slide that, oh, well, you know, dachshunds need to be the way they are to go down the hole after badgers or something. Like badgers are what? They're epidemic in Milton? You know, I mean, you know, we don't, let's be real. You know, we all recognize, right, the divergence. If you own Labradors, the working field lab, the show lab, it's like they're becoming two different breeds. And we see that in many different breeds. And we have people who breed for utilitarian work who don't even want their breed recognized by the CKC because they fear what might happen, because they'll start to be bred for how they look and not for what they can do. And even in my breed, would I see you back there? You know, in the Belgians, we're watching almost a divergence between the working dog and the show dog. You know, you go to the obedience ring or the tracking trial, they look like different dogs almost. And that worries us in our breed too. We don't want to see that happen. When you talk about mutations, they come in two types. Geneticists love these accidental mutations. We don't make them in any breed, in people, in every species. Mutations happen at a low rate, but they're inevitable. They're not our fault. The problem is when we fail to recognize them and allow them to get out of hand. In the early 70s, we woke up and recognized that 90% of collies had collie eye anomaly. Weren't aware of it, snuck up on us. Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, allegedly 20% have cardiomyopathy. Snuck up on us, weren't testing for it, didn't know it was there. 1 in 5, wow, that's a bit worrisome. That's a fatal disease, you know? We look at these, glaucoma and Cocker Spaniels. Cocker Spaniels have a 5-fold risk of glaucoma compared to any other breed. Copper storage disease in Bedlingtons, epilepsy. The figure in Belgians, my breed, is about 15%. That's a voluntary response survey of owners. Good luck with that. I don't know what the prevalence is. High enough to be worried. You know, I've had Belgians forever, and I have, you know, half of them have had at least 1 or 2 seizures in their life. Oh, it's just normal. Well, it's not normal. It's not normal. We shouldn't accept that. Predisposition to cancer. I'm going to show you some data a few minutes from now about the work I do. I just collect data. You know, I've got to identify breeds. If you own a Rottweiler, the odds are it's going to get bone cancer. If you own a Bernese Mountain Dog, it's going to get histiocytic disease. I mean, these are fatal diseases, right? They're dead at 5 years of age. And there's only a small part of it. So these are significant. These are the things we need to test for. And I know most of you do. If you've got that breed, you're going to test for the diseases you can test for. You're not going to breed a stud dog without knowing about its eyes and its hips and so on, and that's wonderful. But to me, that is a small problem in comparison to the other. And this is the phenotypic genetic disease. These are the ones that we create. We don't need to congratulate ourselves for this. Brachycephalic syndrome. You know, there's no, I mean, it's no accident. Every time you get one of these, you know, television or magazine stories about, oh, the shame of purebred dogs. It's always a bulldog that's featured. But it's a pug, it's a Boston. You know, when one walks in the room, you can hear them wheezing away. You know, and we accept, well, that's normal. Well, it's not normal. A bulldog can't even breed normally. I mean, isn't that the epitome of genetic disease? They couldn't even reproduce. If there are no veterinarians, there are no bulldogs. That is the truth. Stenotic nares, soft palate, tracheal collapse, tracheal hypo, all of them. All of them. They can't even thermoregulate properly. They're susceptible to heat stroke. because they don't have enough surface area in their trachea and their mouth to get rid of all this stuff. You know, severely impairs a normal pet lifestyle. I have a friend named Jim Brown. He's a veterinarian. He used to work in Southampton. He breeds bulldogs. Every time we'd get together, I'd make fun of him for that. You know, bulldog breeding veterinarian, or a veterinarian breeding bulldogs. How odd that would be. But nonetheless, he said he had a unique style for selecting his breeding stock. He would take the bitch in heat and put her at one end of a long field. He would take all of his potential stud dogs, line them up at the other end, and say, "Go get her, boys." The one who got there alive. Okay? In other words, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but in truth, he did do something very much like that as a feeble attempt to allow Mother Nature at least a little role in selecting his breeding stock. You know, in other words, the one that was athletic enough to actually run to do the job was able to do it. You know, yeah, scary thought. Okay, so but bulldogs. I mean, veterinarians grow wealthy. We as a profession are we're to blame. We make money. You know, I grew up in Montreal. The first job I had in a veterinary clinic was Malcolm Baker, third-generation veterinarian, fabulous man. He took me aside one day. We had just finished doing about the 8th Cocker Spaniel ear of the day, and said, "That's the ear that built this clinic." You know, all a veterinarian needs is one really wealthy Shar-Pei breeder, and we're set financially for life. Because it's an endless list of diseases. It is, I kid you not, it is true. What we don't have is wealthy Shar-Pei breeders. We don't have wealthy breeders. That's a big problem for veterinarians, you know. We need that. Anyway, just these are things that, and I don't want to beat it to death, but look at gigantism even, something as simple as that. I mean, we know large dogs live shorter lives, right? We know if you've got a Great Dane, there are exceptions, but I mean, most veterinarians would say Great Dane by the age of 8 is pretty well done. You know, and that's okay, but a little hard on the families. You know, be nice to make them, I mean, we don't need them at 180 pounds. I'd be happy with a Great Dane at 110 that would live to 14. Why don't we try that? You know, we know that all large breeds live shorter lives. That's built into the genome once we go with the gigantism. We also know we have to watch their diets, watch their growth rate, because otherwise their bones begin to crumble. And we get this whole list of diseases that all veterinarians are very familiar with. You know, when we do, I'm not in practice, but my daily work, first thing I do is look, it's dog, not cat. Okay, that's a certain number of diseases. The next thing I do is look at the breed. The moment I look at the breed, I've got a list of diseases in mind. And that's true for every veterinarian. They walk in the door of your practice and you know what to look for. You look at this breed at that age, bingo. We've got 2 or 3 diseases that are on the list. Even making them small. You know, little toy poodles that jump off the bed and fracture a leg. You know, happens frequently. They're just so small and so fragile that they can't even do, I'm not talking about super athletic things, just the thing we promise pet owners when we sell them the dog. We're going to give you a dog that's going to give you a lifetime of love and affection and joy, and you don't have to mortgage your house to pay the vet bills. And I take that seriously, you know, from a moral perspective. Others that you might find some of them interesting. I mean, Shar-Pei's become less wrinkly. They started out not too wrinkly, then they got fashionable and became very wrinkly. That's when Shar-Peis became a mainstay of my business. I do a lot of skin work. Every Shar-Pei that walks this earth has pyoderma, bacterial overgrowth. Skin is meant to be flat and smooth. If you wrinkle it, you get pockets of moisture, pockets where the hair abrades, and pockets where there's no air movement. Same thing with German Shepherds, with their very dense hair coat called for in the standard, and the low tail. They get a disease called anal furunculosis. These are the things I'm talking about. These are things that you put in the standard and you don't realize their disease implications. That if you had German Shepherds with less dense coat and a tail that was a little higher, you wouldn't have that problem. It's not a big deal, except it's a $5,000 bill for the owner trying to deal with that disease. It goes on for life. It's an awful thing. How we build their feet predisposes to all kinds of diseases, like these little things that you don't realize what they do sometimes mean a lot. And I'm not blaming anybody, because we're only learning about these. We don't think about it. Veterinarians do their world, you dog breeders do your world. We need to talk just a wee bit more. to say, you know, if you took that out of your standard, we'd do a lot better. Change the standard about the eye shape. We could do a lot better for many of these breeds. Eyelid shape, just as an example, I'll use Belgians, because that way I don't have to offend anyone but me. A few years ago, we decided Belgians, we needed to make the eye just a bit smaller. Well, you don't change the size of an eye. What you do is you change the shape of the eyelids, how they close, how they fit. Bug-eyed dogs and collies with their nice little eyes have a globe that's actually the same size. There's no difference in the size of the eye. It's how the eyelids fit. So if you take a dog and the breed standard calls for, in nice words, a bulging eye, like a Pekingese or a pug or something, that eye is dry, the eyelids cannot close. And their whole life, they have corneal disease. They get blood vessels and pigment. Every pug I've ever seen has this. Okay? So it's not like if they get eye disease, they will, because the breed standard calls for it. In the Belgians, we decided the eye was getting a bit too big. We wanted to make it a bit smaller. So that means you breed dogs that have a tighter fitting eyelid, and what happens then is the eyelid rolls in. It's called entropion. So when you have a dog with a small eye, like a Doberman or a Collie or a Belgian, they're at risk for the eyelid rolling in, and it abrades the cornea, and you get entropion. Well, we backed away from that in a big hurry. That only went on for 1 or 2 generations. We realized it wasn't a good deal. We backed away from it. But Collie eye anomaly, geneticists think, devastating disease for that breed, was largely induced by that standard calling for a small, small eye, which was how we interpreted sweet expression. I don't know if any of you are collie breeders in this room, but you know, I think the standard still calls for that. And inadvertently, we interpreted that to mean make the eye smaller so the dog is sitting there sort of smiling and squinting at you. And that caused the eye disease. It's very common. Eyes are a big thing for me. They're my hobby. And I see genetically or phenotypically determined eye disease is extremely common. We make it, especially in the dog with the big bulging eyes. Or dogs that are supposed to have loose eyelids, like bloodhounds, where the lower eyelid often hangs out. You might as well put out a basket to catch all the dust and crap in the room, because it gets caught in that lower eyelid. Well, let me just, I'm sure you've seen this before. This was back, I think, in about '96. I was teaching here at the time, and all my students were quite excited about this. I used to lecture on genetic disease, and this was I often would open with this picture. The shame of overbreeding, whatever overbreeding means. It sounds like too much sex or something, you know. But, and it caused quite a stir at the time, and then it kind of faded into obscurity. But then, of course, we had the BBC documentaries, which caused a lot more stir. But before that, give the Swedes credit, right? They have always been leaders, as far as I'm concerned, at least in the veterinary world. They have been the leaders in the gathering of data and serious considerations about genetic disease in dogs. And those of you who judge over there, I'm sure are familiar with these BSIs. I was talking to John Reeve-Newson yesterday, asking him about this, because he's judged there. And he says that, at the beginning, when he goes over there, he'll get this list. There are, I think, at the time this was written, which is 2013, 46 high-risk breeds. This is done not from the top down. This was initiated by the breed clubs and by the public. This has tremendous support in Sweden, which I think is just fabulous. Better than I would expect in North America. The Swedes are fairly sort of analytical and dispassionate people by attitude, if you visited Sweden, and it's a strong sort of cultural trait. These are recommendations given to judges, alerting them at the request of the breed clubs to specifically look at certain phenotypic traits when judging these dogs, in addition to type, in addition to all the stuff in the standard. It is not to say you throw all that stuff out. I don't want German Shepherds looking like Whippets. That's fine, but they're asked to say, the breed club wants you to pay particular attention to, gait, cowhawks, I don't care what, but a structural trait that they believe is a disease issue. And the judges are 100% on board with that. It's a remarkable story. Tremendous support, and things are changing. So this is judge dependent, this initiative. It's not coming from the top down. I mean, the Swedish Kennel Club is obviously very much on board, and they're administering it. But they didn't initiate this. The judges, by 2013, so in a 4-year span, they gave over 10,000 reports back to the Kennel Club. Reports on their judging experience at this or that dog show, where every dog there gets critiqued. And those critiques, which have this added sort of paragraph, if you will, about the BSI, about these problematic issues, go back to the Kennel Club, and they're now gathering data. But you see, there's a final piece. They also go back to the breed clubs. So the breed clubs know what kind of progress is being made. You know, if they think they got a big problem with whatever, smelly ears, you know, bad temperament, okay? We're talking about phenotypic changes. I must digress and say temperament is one of those, right? It's just as important as movement and everything else. So the Swedes include temperament in that. And if they get instructions from a breed club that they're particularly concerned about shyness or aggressiveness or something, they'll comment on that too. And it allows them to make progress. Okay. That's going to be a problem. Okay. What do you want? 10 minutes? 5 minutes?
5 would be nice. I am enjoying it.
Yeah, but everyone's too tired. All right, the British experience is different. The BBC documentaries created chaos. Britain, as you know, is extremely animal rights oriented. All of this was done by, basically came out of SPCA, not the Kennel Club. The Kennel Club was really not on board with this. The SPCA forced their hand and said these structural defects, these things we're calling phenotypic defects, the bulldogs, the Bostons, the pugs, the giant breeds, the toy breeds, they're an offense to animal welfare. And that's what the British are using. The public over there is extremely intolerant, as you are well aware, to anything related to animal welfare abuse. I mean, BBC stopped carrying Crufts, right? Because Crufts wouldn't play ball, and banned the breeds that the BBC thought should be banned, that the public in England thought should be banned. So this British experience after the BBC documentary, there were 3 separate studies, big panels of experts, and they all came up with the same recommendations. And I'll very quickly go through them for your interest. By no means am I saying we need to adopt this. I'm saying look at what other countries have done. I think the Swedish experience is a great one. That if the judges, if the breed club said we're concerned about this, and the judges said, okay, we'll be your hatchet men on this, we will not reward dogs with that defect, whichever one you say, then there'd be no stimulus to breed those dogs, and that defect would disappear. It'd be a fabulous thing to watch happen. Anyway, in Britain, they're getting a bit more top-heavy. I think a bit more police state, and I don't think it's going to fly here, but just see what they say. Number 1, we need data collection. I'm going to skip this stuff about Rottweilers and Boxers. Number 2, we need to change the breed standards. We need experts. The breed clubs need help to look at their breed standards and point out wording that dictates disease. If our breed standard inadvertently says something that's going to harm our breed, we should get rid of it. Usually that means reducing its specificity, opening it up, making it a little more general, giving us a bit more flexibility. Make incest illegal. Establish binding rules for dog breeding. In other words, dog breeders have to have not a voluntary code of ethics, but a mandatory code of ethics. I doubt if that'll fly here. In Britain, it probably will. Enhance public education. In other words, if owners won't buy a Shar-Pei because it's got a $10,000 vet bill attached to its bill of sale, the breeders will go out of business until they change the breed and make it something that will not be doomed to a lifetime of ill health. Breed-specific genetic improvement programs. Every breed club should employ a geneticist or get a volunteer who says, you've given me a list of 20 diseases you're concerned about. These ones we can tackle, these ones you have no chance at all. Epilepsy in Belgians. We don't know how it's inherited. We can't detect it till after the dog is breeding age. We have no hope of making any progress against that disease. Really, it's sad, but it's the bad choice. Hip dysplasia. From a genetic perspective, we should never have chosen hip dysplasia to try to get rid of. It's too complicated. We've not made a great deal of progress. There are much simpler diseases. So if you've got a breed that's got 10 diseases, get some advice about which ones are worth tackling, and you can make a lot of progress in a big hurry because you've got a good test and it's got a simple inheritance pattern. And in my 5-minute allotment, here's my idea of a show dog. This is one of my own. He's soaking wet, covered in leaves. He just come up from the beach, but he still looks like a great dog. So there's my little bit of humor. He's 13 years old when taking that picture. Belgians generally do really well into old age. You know, it makes me proud to own them. Elegant looking dogs. So everyone needs to get a Belgian. Very important. Anyway, thank you. I hope I haven't, again, I want to reiterate that we're all in this room deeply committed to the welfare of our dogs in general, our breed in particular, but all dogs. And what I've tried to tell you is that there are things we can do. Personally, I think the judges hold the key. You know, because we all, as breeders, as dog show people, we all are seeking the approval of the judges. And what the judge puts up is going to dominate the genotype of that breed for the next several years. We've all seen that happen. Those who've been around a long time, like Bob Whitney, have seen it many times, that you see a very prominent judge put up, no, experienced, like good wine. But you know, you watch a prominent judge, back in my day, a judge like Joe Gregory, who carried a lot, I don't know if he's still around even, but he carried a lot of influence. And if he put up this particular dog, the next year you saw that dog copied 800 times over in the show ring. Tremendous influence. And judges need to be very careful then that they're not putting up something that's going to do damage to that breed just because of fashion. And if you can take that message to heart, you'll have done everyone in the room a favor. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to thank Dr. Wilcock for his very provocative statements and acknowledgement of what we do at the CKC and how it aligns to our mandate to promote the health and well-being of dogs and the respect for what they do every day. So a token of our appreciation.
Oh, thank you very much, Les. A late meeting. Are there any questions? I'll be here for a while. I mean, I work here, so, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm Laura McKay. I live here in Guelph. I'm a CKC member, and I have 2 pet Labradors at home. They're my 4th and 5th. And I also have a PhD in animal breeding and quantitative genetics from the University of Guelph. So I'm really clued into a lot of what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of it, but you know, there's a number of little points where I alter things slightly. I think it all comes down to a matter of our commitment. I'll be honest with you, my 10-month-old Labrador puppy at home, she's the sweetest girl that I've ever seen. I've probably spent, since the beginning of this year, $7,000 or $8,000 in vet bills on her. So, yeah, you know what side of the fence I'm on here. I would encourage the CKC Genetics Committee to encourage the breed clubs to take a really good look at their standards and also their code of ethics. I think it comes down to how important a trait is to you. If you have like you said, the perfect conformation specimen, but they have epilepsy, I would disagree that you can't do anything about epilepsy, to be honest, and I disagree that you couldn't do anything about hip dysplasia. The Germans, or the Europeans, have reduced the incidence of hip dysplasia by applying far more stringent conditions, not just that the breeding stock clears, but that all the close relatives clear. So you can get there. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of where you want to put your priorities. Yeah. And it's really in the breed club's hands, I would say. And that's all I have to say. Yeah. It's just a comment.
I don't disagree with either of that. And when I said we're not making progress with hip dysplasia, I should have said it quite that way. It would not have been, because it's such a polygenic trait, yes, I would not have chosen it as my flagship for a genetic control program.
No, it's very easy to fix things that are single genes, yeah, and that we have DNA tests for. Yeah. When you want to do a polygenic trait, particularly a threshold trait like hip dysplasia or elbow dysplasia, which is what my girl has, you need to look at close relatives.
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to.
It's a much tougher road to hoe.
Yes.
Yeah. I see we've lost our sound. It's okay. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Everyone's dying here. I understand that. Okay.
When you were talking about genetic disease, which was exaggerated or increased by the line breeding, I mentioned previously a genetic profile which has just been established at UC Davis. This takes you down to the individual dogs, inbreeding, gives you the 33 profile, the DLA. This is the tool which enables people who want to breed to keep diversity within their dogs. We're looking under the skin.
I think we're done.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Take care. Oh, where?
I just have one more question for you, or I guess a comment. Everything shut off, so I'm just going to stay here. My name is Jutta Hammermuller, Hammermuller. My comment is in the initial presentation, you were talking about how there's more genetic disease, or there's more disease in purebreds and all of that kind of stuff. So now we have people getting purebred golden doodles. I mean, sorry, there's a lot of people telling me they have purebred golden doodles or labradoodles. And they're getting them because purebreds are more diseased. They don't live as long, all of that kind of stuff. And there's a great deal of difficulty trying to explain to them that they're the same genes. In purebred dogs, you have people, good breeders, who do the genetic tests, show that their lines are clear of problem X, Y, or Z, and that's a reason to buy a purebred, all right? Because it's the same genes, not all of the genes, but a lot of the genes are the same. So if you get a purebred dog with all these genetic tests done, your probability is much less than if you would get a a purebred golden doodle that nobody's done the genetic test for because they're healthier. They don't have those diseases. Right? So I think you're kind of leading people down the wrong track by saying that. Yep. Right? That's just my comment.
I don't go around saying that to general audiences. It is true. I mean, I don't want people shouldn't deny in their own hearts that purebreds are as healthy as F1 hybrids, because they're not. You know, and every cattle, pig, and chicken breeder in the world will tell you exactly that. It's well established. The problem, of course, with these designer dogs is that, you know, in order, because people want the golden doodle to look like a golden doodle, they don't want the huge range, so you're getting golden doodles bred to golden doodles, and just got a new breed. So you don't actually have hybrid vigor anymore. And it's all I was saying was that we're walking a line. I just want people to realize that narrow razor we're walking to get the predictability of the purebred. That I like my Belgians, I like everything about them, I want exactly that kind of temperament. But on the other hand, realize there is a risk involved, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that risk.
I guess I just wanted to make a comment that F1 is not going to be healthier if the parents have the genes for the genetic disease. There are many golden doodles with hip dysplasia. Yeah. Right, because the parents are not being tested. They're carrying the genes for hip dysplasia. The puppies are getting the genes, so F1 is not healthier.
It's a wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wonderful debate, and it can go on forever and ever, except that the shuttle to take some of the board members back to catch their airplane leaves at 2:15. I would like to, at this time, just remind everybody in the room, just across the hall at room 1810, there is some snacks. Please feel free. The directors will be there for about, maybe 10, 15 minutes before they depart. I would like a member to move a motion to adjourn. I recognize Mr. Whitney, since he was the mouthiest one. Bob Whitney. That's what I had.
have to read.